Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Yorkshire Gamers A Reet Big Wargames podcast. And here we are with episode 86. And my guest for the interview very shortly will be Mr. Barry Hilton. And if you haven't already, then the Brews in the Binyard, episode 85, the summer special, is doing extremely well. We've not been banned anywhere, so we can't have been that controversial. But we did draw the matches for the World Cup of Historical War Games rules. And I'm speaking to you now on the evening of the 26th of June, and we're currently about halfway through round two of the fixtures. If you've not already, then all the action is going on the Yorkshire Gamer Facebook page. Apologies if you're not on Facebook, but it's the only way I've found to run the World Cup and have as many people as possible be involved in it. And we've had 15,000 votes already so far, and we're not even halfway through the competition. So quite clearly it works on there. So bob down to there if you're not involved already. It's we've got some quite exciting matchups happening as we speak and also coming up during the course of the next few weeks. It's timed to end with the final of the actual Football World Cup, and let's hope we can keep on time for that. So today's interview is with Mr. Barry Hilton, he of the Lily Banners, he of Mad for War, Republic to Empire, loads of things, but he's best known for that Malburian late 1600s, early 1700s period of warfare. The rules for it, both big battles and skirmish, and a range of figures as well. So lovely bloke to talk to. We had a great chat about so many things. So sit down with a cup of tea, pack of Garibaldi's, and without further ado, here's the interview. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the interview section of 86 Yorkshire Gamer podcasts. So hopefully we'll get this one right. So my guest today is a familiar face at Wargames Show with his wonderful games featuring pointy hats and big flags. But he doesn't just play games, he writes the rules and he makes the figures as well. So if you fancy unleashing your inner Lily Banners, dipping your toes in the Donnybrook, trying your hand at Republic to Empire, or if you just feel the urge to put a sailor's costume on and go mad for war, my guest has the books for you. The ever-growing rows of books are not the only string to the bow that my guest has. He also produces a wonderful range of figures. We had a quick chat on the live from T'other Partisan episodes, and I'm really pleased to say that he's back on the show today for a longer catch-up and a longer form chat. So, as always, let's give a Reet big, warm Yorkshire welcome to Mr. Barry Hilton. How are you doing, Barry?
I'm very well, Ken, and very nice to see you.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on today, mate. I didn't quite realise how much stuff you'd done and all the different rabbit holes that are available for us to go down until I started researching this podcast. And I kind of, bloody hell, Barry did that as well.
That's because of my age, Ken. You see, I'm not old.
And because of my age, I'd forgotten all the stuff that you'd done. which is a fantastic thing, and it's great. So apologies to the listeners. This could go absolutely anywhere. We've got a bit of a plan, but it could go anywhere. Let's do it. We've done 86 of these before, so you know what this show's like. So the first thing we do, Barry, just to get you warmed up and a bit of your tonsils moving and stuff, is a thing that we call the 4-minute challenge, and it's just basically an opportunity for you to give us a brief history, a brief introduction into your wargaming, with a little bit of pressure on it, so you don't go on for like 3 hours about your first ever figure. We can summarise it for the audience, and don't worry if you don't get everything in, because we'll come back and we'll have a chat about the bits of it. So, are you ready for this? Have you done any preparation?
A little bit.
Oh, good lad. Some people do absolutely nothing and screw it up completely, but there we go. I haven't got any messages or anything, so I'll just put my phone up to the screen when we get to 4 minutes, mate.
Oh, Sorry, I was going to say, I think we'll be finished a lot sooner than 4 minutes.
Oh, good lad, good lad. Right, off you go then, mate.
Okay, so here we go. Started with Airfix at age about 5 or 6, all the little plastic polythene figures. And then I started learning to paint, or think I started learning to paint when I was about 9 or 10, using Humbrol enamels, including the gloss ones, which made the figures look really awful. I started actually wargaming probably when I was about 10 or 11, because before that, really all I was doing was chucking marbles at loads of Timpo stuff on the carpet, or firing matchsticks with one of those Britain spring-loaded guns.
Classic.
That was
classic.
Fantastic fun. I really loved doing that, actually. I joined the school Wargames club when I was about 10, 11, I think. And then, actually, I discovered girls and rock and roll. And I went off to be a musician.
Wow.
I put the hobby down because it wasn't cool. And then I got signed up in a rock band by Warner Brothers, and we did an album and all that kind of stuff. But I got a bit sick of that, but I actually got physically sick, and I picked up the hobby again when I was about 25. Actually, I was waiting to go and record some guitar solo overdubs, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I'd gone into newsagents, and I saw miniature Wargames on the shelf. So I picked that up, and I thought, I used to do this stuff. I liked that. And that actually got me back into the hobby. So about 25, I got back into the hobby, joined a local club where I live in Scotland, really learned to paint at that age, and then sort of seriously started. League of Augsberg was a creation that, just before that, I did my first Wargames show, putting a game on in Edinburgh, about 87, which was at the Chambers Street, where Claymore used to be in the old venue. Quite liked that. And then after that, League of Augsburg in about 1990, I think 91. It's a very grand name, League of Augsburg. There's never been more than 3 people involved. And for most of the 36 years of its existence, it's been a team of 1. So it's me, basically. So League of Augsburg is me, and it's just a flag of convenience name that I've used for games and sort of demos over the years. I used to put on probably 10, 12 shows a year, but that was when I was young. And now I do about 3 or 4 now. And that's more or less as up to date, I think. I mean, I'm a gamer. At heart, I'm a gamer. That's what I am. I like to paint, but I really do like to play games.
Excellent. Well, you've 2 minutes 45 there, mate. So that's
There you go.
wonderful. And we got loads of interesting stuff in there, and lots of stuff that we can have a dip into and a chat about. So before this sojourn into rock stardom, what sort of you had that period where you were chucking marbles and firing matchsticks, which, to be honest, it's probably the best bit of wargaming that all of us have had.
Yep.
But when you went into, in inverted commas, proper wargaming, can you remember what rules you were into, what periods?
Yeah, then I was into, it was World War II, a lot of it, sort of Airfix plastics. I don't really remember what rules we used. We probably were getting books out of the library. That was when kids used to go to the library, Ken.
Yeah.
You probably remember that.
I do,
you go down and get, sign out a Stuart Asquith book or a Charles Grant book for a month or whatever, take it home and try and copy the pages manually, or get somebody that you knew to photocopy them or something. But, we played those kind of games. I used to play naval war games by drawing the overhead profiles of ships on bits of paper.
Nice.
And then put them on the carpet and move them around my bedroom. I remember doing that with my
Brilliant.
mates. Yeah, that was good. I really did enjoy that, actually. I was even into Dreadnoughts at that stage. So there must have been a set of rules sometime, a naval war game set sometime in the 70s that was popular. I can't actually remember who might have written that. But anyway, those were we're all pretty conventional, I think. And up until I re-entered the hobby in about 86 or 87, when I got into WRG 6th edition, which all the guys that I gamed with were all obsessed with. But of course, that gets to the stage where you start to question mark Teutonic Knights against ancient Sumerians and things like that. Those games they were a bit surreal. So I think that was when I started to sort of find my channel.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. But and you had a war games club at school. You said that's
Yeah.
pretty good. I think that would be a rarity these days.
Oh, you wouldn't be allowed it probably, but I still remember Mr. Hughes. It was Mr. Hughes was the guy that ran the War Games Club, and we used to take it was a dual purpose thing because I was in the Subutio Club as well, right?
Oh, classic.
And we used the Subutio pitches for the Subutio, but then when we went to the War Games Club, we turned them over, so there was just a green base cloth, and we used that for wargaming. That was the utilitarian nature of our youth.
Quality, absolute quality. Whereabouts did you grow up then, mate? You're
Uh,
clearly from Scotland. Whereabouts are you
yes,
living and grown up?
I've been told. I was once. I spent my whole working life in England, actually, or abroad. But I was down south one time about 15, 16 years ago, and somebody said to me, "You're from East Kilbride, aren't you?" Now, coming from someone in England, that they were so specific about the town that I came from, I was absolutely gobsmacked, and I said, "Yeah, that is correct. How do you know that?" He said, "Because you talk just like Ali McCoist, and he's from East
Ah,
Kilbride." So apparently there's an accent from East Kilbride, which is just about 10, 15 miles outside Glasgow. So yeah,
yeah.
born and bred here, but spent most of my life away, if you like.
Yeah, well, the listeners will be tuned into the accent because we had Ian McDonald on the regular on the show on the Brews in the Vineyard, which was the previous episode. So he's a Glasgow lad. So hopefully the listeners are tuned in to me and my accent and you and your accent.
Well,
Subtitles are available for those south of Northampton.
what I always say, Ken, is I don't have an accent. Everyone else does.
Exactly.
As
Exactly.
you probably believe that as well, having that very fine-tuned Yorkshire accent of yours. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we try our best. We try our best to communicate with the southern tribes,
Yeah.
but sometimes it just doesn't work. But what we've had people on. I mean, I play a bit of guitar myself, and we've had other people on. It seems to be a bit of a wargaming thing. That is, we dabble in the six string every now and again. But you mentioned a bit of a rock star career, mate. What
Well,
was that all about?
I always say it was sex and drugs and rock and roll without the sex and drugs. Uh, so it was hard work.
Yeah,
I mean, we could play. We were a good band. It came out of a band that was very big in Glasgow in the early mid 80s called Sneaky Pete, which a few Scottish listeners might remember.
yeah,
They broke up, and they sort of nicked me out of another band, and we were called The Force.
force.
Yeah, and then we got signed up by Warner Brothers, did an album, did a few tours. We were kind of rock band. No one likes to say what they were actually like, but we were kind of a sort of cross between, I would have said, U2 and Duran or something like that. It was somewhere in the
Yeah.
middle. But once I got it, I thought that was what I wanted, but once I got it, I absolutely hated it because if you're in a band and you're playing 6 nights a week, which we were, and still holding down day jobs, when you get signed up, the record company stop you doing everything. You don't,
Hmm.
you're not. They tell you what to play, when to play, where you can play, and then
Hmm.
for the rest of the time, you're just sitting around doing nothing.
Hmm.
So, it got really boring and really sort of stressful. So I chucked it after about a year and a half.
So you
Cured. I'm
kind of,
cured.
yeah. So you were kind of just after that Simple Minds, Big Country, mid-Euro wave.
Pretty much about that time. I mean, so those guys were, you would see them occasionally in Glasgow in the records, music stores and things like that, guitar
Hmm.
shops and, guitar engineers that you knew that were fixing guitars and stuff. You'd go in and maybe Charlie Burchill would be in there.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it was no big thing for them or anybody else because everybody was, obviously, they were famous and we weren't. But, I mean,
yeah,
a lot of musicians are just blokes.
yeah.
Yeah, guitarists. It's like it's like wargamers. You're interested in the figures. You're interested in the paint. We were interested
Yeah.
in guitar strings and Gibsons and stuff like that. So yeah,
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm sure we could talk about that for hours, mate, but we need to stick on the wargaming.
yep, of
And a
course.
cracking mention for Charlie Burchill, great
Yeah,
underrated guitarist, top guy, top guy. I saw Midgeour last month in Bradford in the Bradford Live in concert, and he's still got pipes. There's the lad, still
yeah,
sings.
good. Good. You're back on the music, Ken. Get back to the wargaming.
Ah, fuck, it's me. It's me. We're all. I tell you, you won't have listened to this one, but I interviewed a guy who owned a paintbrush company, Pro Art, just over the road from where I used to work in Skipton in North Yorkshire, and we spent half an hour discussing the best fish and chips in Skipton, which like narrowed the audience down to about 10, but people seem to like it anyway.
Good.
So you go into the shop, you see this Wargames magazine that you pick up,
Yeah.
and you're back in the fold.
Yeah, I think I was looking for something. If you see, I mean, obviously I wasn't happy in what I was doing, and the magazine at that time was under the stewardship of the late great Duncan McFarlane, who I counted as a good. People talk about friends and having loads of friends. I don't have a lot of friends. Not surprising, some people might say, but I always counted Duncan as a really good acquaintance, and I had lots of interaction with Duncan over a long period of time. I always found him to be an amazing guy, quite enigmatic, quite kind of mysterious, like yourself.
Yeah.
But he was also a real font of knowledge, and he had taken over the magazine, I think, at that time, or started it. I can't actually quite remember. I know that when he passed away, I had a conversation with him sometime just before he passed away, and he said something like, I still actually own Miniature Wargames. And I think
Right.
he owned the rights to it, or he owned the name or something,
Yeah.
even though he wasn't the editor anymore. But that was a very innovative magazine for the time, as you probably remember, and I found it inspirational.
So just roughly then, what sort of year is this when you're picking that magazine
About
up?
86, 87,
Yeah.
some about 86 or 87, I would say.
Yeah, so I think April 84 was issue 1. So
Right.
it had been going for a couple of years, bit of time to develop. Do you remember? I always talk on this show about some of the photographs from some of those early magazines. The Peter Gilder Italian Wars pictures off quite obviously had a massive influence on me. Was there anything that you remember about that early period when you started back in the hobby with those magazines that you kind of went, wow, and it led on to other things?
Well, a little story that I think is relevant to the question you've asked there. We both know Dave Thomas pretty well. And I, over the years, have always been sort of chinning Dave about his massive collection of stuff that he's got that sits all covered in dust in a garage. And I was round at his house one day, and he took me out, and he had all these bread trays full of lovely painted figures, but they were covered in a layer of about 6 inches of dust. And I said, this is a disgrace. You should be taken out and shot at dawn for this. And I said, this stuff, it needs to be seen again. And he said, all right, yeah, whatever. I said, right, I tell you what we'll do. I said, I'll take 2 of these trays. I'll clean up all the figures. I'll photograph them against backdrops, and I'll give them to Dan Falconbridge at the magazine. And hopefully he'll run a little feature on it. Now, some of that stuff that I photographed, I probably did that about 10 years ago now. It might have been a wee bit less than 10 years ago. But they were original figures that had either been on the cover of Military Modelling or had been on the cover of Miniature Wargames between 1974 and 88 or something like that. And one of the units was a unit that Dave had painted. I think they were Hinchcliffe Young Guard figures.
Oh, nice.
And they had been on the second cover of Military Modelling, I think. And I photographed them again. I tried to get the shot just as close as I could to the original. It wasn't exactly like it, but it was close enough. But so I mean, it was that kind of stuff. I mean, stuff from the Gilder era and things that were inspirational then. I mean, you look at the figure design at that time and you look at the way that figures have evolved. But they're still, I mean, I'm not one of these old school guys. I don't particularly like old school gaming as such, but there was some magic about some of the stuff that was about in the early days, because otherwise there wouldn't be what we have now. I mean, it's only evolved from the inspiration created by those early sculpts and photographs. So yeah, I think that was a great time.
I think they could still be an inspiration today. When I went back into 28mm Napoleonics a couple of years ago, I went for Elite Miniatures for my French Guard, just for that feel of them. there's something about them in a unit
Uh-huh.
that makes they just look like a unit as opposed to zooming in on individual features on a sword knot or something like that. They've got a character to them that I really enjoy. So when you come back in, then what periods do you start? Do you?
Ancients. It was ancients
Hmm,
because, well, English Civil War as well. I picked up some front rank from that was way back in about 86. The figures were a bit more kind of thin and slightly more two-dimensional then. I
uh,
mean, the chunkiness in front rank seemed to have came later. But if you look at front rank figures that were manufactured or designed way back in the mid 80s, they were thinner and flatter. Still
hmm.
nice. And so I painted a few of those, but it was mostly 15mm ancients, and I was buying minifigs, mostly minifigs, thousands of minifigs, Mongols, Huns, that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed Wargames. WRG6 edition was a super set of rules. I
Yeah.
mean, if it was one of those things that if you could have it on your gravestone, what do you remember about wargaming? Testers and friends advancing +2 is what I remember from. It was the first line of the QRS for WRG6 edition. Yeah, you always wanted that +2 for advancing infantry or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the classic confused or Spanish.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which always makes me giggle. That does. And just before we move on, just from picking bits out of your little, your little 4 minutes or your little 2 and 3/4 minutes, you mentioned Claymore at Chamber Street,
yeah.
which I have extremely fond memories of because we used to come up from Leeds. We'd like get a minibus at the club and we'd set off. Or somebody would set off at 3 o'clock and drive around Leeds and pick everyone up, and then drive up to Edinburgh to Chamber Street, and then when it was at the Medbank Stadium, do a game all day, and then go to the pub for a drink and a meal, and then drive home. And like the last person to be dropped off at like 2 in the morning, we just can't do that anymore. So I am coming up to Claymore this year, so I'm looking forward to that. But Chamber Street was an adventure, wasn't it? It was. Is that the one that was on like 3 or 4 floors?
That was the one. And the parking was always horrendous
Yeah.
because it's right in the centre of town. I mean, it's really just behind the Royal Mail
Mm,
to the south of it. But it was it was an old fashioned sort of Victorian hall venue with 3 or 4 floors and a sort of gallery bit, a walk round. I mean, my memories of that were the parking and the smell because it was a bit whiffy on the the inside. You know, you know how it can get in a war game show when it's hot in the
yeah.
summer. But no, I've got very fond memories of that show. It was a good show.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I just remember we did. Oh, it's escaped my mind now. The big Renaissance galley fleet battle,
Oh, Lepanto.
Lepanto. We did, yeah, we did that, and I painted all the galleys for it,
Wow.
and that would have been, I reckon, late 80s, and
Right.
I've still not been able to look at a Renaissance galley since.
And no wonder.
it
Yeah.
was it was like, oh
In
my
fact,
god.
it was at that venue that I saw my first League of Augsburg period game.
Oh wow.
And I remember I actually put a game on, I think the year before, which might have been 87 or 88 or something. And then the next year, I don't think I did put a game on. And there was this massive table, probably 12, 14 foot long. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't recognise any of these troops or the flags or anything. And I said to the bloke that was one of the blokes that was running the game, I said, what is this? And he said, "Oh, it's War of the Grand Alliance, and this is William the Third against Louis the 14th." And it was a kind of Flanders thing. The guy was a school teacher from Accrington, but he was a Scottish guy, and he was he said, I said that I worked in England at the time, and he said, "Oh, you need to come up to my house for a game." And actually, that was the start of my kind of League of Augsburg
Oh.
induction. It was a pure chance look at this game, which looked amazing, but I didn't know what it was. Very kind of esoteric period then. And I started going to that guy's house every Tuesday. He had a big table in his loft, and we used to play massive games and leave them set up from week to week. So I'd go back up there and continue, 3 or 4 weeks on the trot, one game. And there was 3 or 4 guys. In fact, there's still 3 of them are from Yorkshire. There was Stevie Dolan, who who's I think he's over Skipton Way or whatever, and a few others who were all part of that group. That was a great time, yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk in depth about the League of Augsberg, which I probably have mispronounced in detail later on. But how do you remember how you first got interested in history and military history specifically? Did it come from family, from a teacher? Where did that spark come from?
Well, probably like every boy in Britain at the time, we had parents, uncles, and grandparents that had been in the war, served in the forces. And commando books, John Wayne movies. Although I detest John Wayne, but generally it was all that stuff. That was what we watched on the telly, and that was what we got to see in the movies. So, I mean, I think it was kind of natural for us all to be interested in things military. So I was interested from a very early age in history in general, but also military history. So it was from probably when I was at primary school. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just holding up an edition of Commando comic.
Oh.
They're being reprinted, and I get them. I get 4 every 2 weeks.
Oh, do you?
I just sit down, and I'm just a kid again. I sit down on the sofa, flick my legs up on the thing. I mean, so Mum can't tell me off anymore. Flick my legs up below my knees, and I'm reading me Commando comics. I love them.
Well, let me put my bid in then for a particular Commando book that I have coveted since I was about 8 years old, which I never ever was able to get my hands on. It's called Night Snatch, and it's about a combined drop by American and British paratroopers behind the lines. Now, my cousin had that book, and I begged him to give it to me. I tried to bribe him with 10 books for the one book, and he never, ever gave me it. So Night Snatch, if anybody's got Night Snatch, I'd love a copy of it, because I've never seen it again.
Well, I'll keep an eye out for that, mate, because now what they do now is they produce 4 magazines every 2 months, weeks, every 2 weeks, and 2 of them are new magazines, and 2 of them are reprints of classics.
Right.
So there's a reasonable chance that has been reprinted in recent years. I might even have a copy. I can't promise you, mate, but I'll have a look.
Here's a question for you, Ken. Obviously, if you're collecting these, you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I have to interview you. On this
that's
one.
fine. That's fine.
Have they cleaned up have they PC'd all the cliches that the Japanese used to shout out and the Germans used to shout out, like Schweinhund and all that, or is that all in there still?
All the two original prints that come out every 2 weeks, they are still in the original format. So it's all the Japanese are Tojos and there's all the Turnhimmel and all that sort of stuff is in there. And then the newer 2, you can tell that they're written by a more modern author.
Right.
There's a more diverse cast in it, for example.
Right.
But it's still got that classic feel to them.
All right, very good.
So yeah, you're guaranteed at least 2 really old school copies every 2 weeks. So yeah, it's definitely worth it, mate. It's definitely worth it.
Nostalgia.
It's brilliant. I love it. Absolutely love it. So we've talked a little bit about your introduction, and we'll move on now, because this first bit is really just about you as an individual. What are you doing in terms of your wargaming then? Do you go to a club? Do you have a setup at home? What's your personal gaming like?
Well, actually, you've kind of linked to. I know that you're going to talk maybe about things that are not so appealing in wargaming terms later on, but you've kind of linked into that early here, because I'm just fundamentally against clubs, really. I don't like organised anything, organised religion, organised politics, organised clubs, and I've got a kind of thing about office bearers in general. So I'm a bit anti-establishment, and I always think, you give somebody a title, you give them a bit of power, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So my experiences of clubs over the years have not been particularly edifying. So I tend to game in a quite tight circle of people. I game at home, or occasionally when we've got a little group of guys that get on, we'll hire a venue and put something on there, for a day or a weekend or something like that. But I'm lucky enough to have a reasonably big setup at home. So I've got a table that's 12 feet by 6, which I don't always use at that size, but I'll cut that down and use half of it, or if I'm doing small naval stuff, it's a smaller space. But that's how I do it. And I actually game a lot over using technology. So during lockdown, when we were all isolated, we came up with the idea of having a game set up in one house and everyone else dialing in on like a video like we're doing just now. So I would move the pieces as per the instructions of the players. They would roll the dice at home. And that got us through lockdown because we used to play every week. And then when we were allowed to reintegrate, as we all were, I said to the lads, right, will we knock that on the head and just get back together? And they said, no, let's just carry on doing it on the video, because actually the benefit of that was that you could sit in your house, have a glass of wine or a beer or something, still play a war game, and then you didn't have an hour to drive home, so. Yeah. We still meet once, face to face once a month, but mostly we play once a week, and we do it by video.
Yeah, it's a few people still carry that on. I've got friends, and I've had people on the podcast before who, they've got maybe a friend who emigrated to Australia, and they can join in a game, and you've got all that thing. I think it was Colin Ashton who got like little cameras that he'd move around at figure level to show the individual players what they could actually see. So I think it's a really good method, and like you say, you haven't got that additional requirement to drive home, and you can have a beer if you want and all that sort of stuff. So that's good to hear. We're going to talk about the League of Augsberg and the naval stuff a little bit later on in the show. But what are your favourite go-to things? Obviously those two. Is there anything else that you kind of dip into?
Yeah, actually, I do have quite a wide taste in wargaming. I like Napoleonic. I like American Civil War, although I'm not particularly known for doing those kind of games. But I've played a lot of American Civil War. I like 30 Years' War and English Civil War. I do like Ancients, but I haven't played so much of that for a while. Second World War, I was big into, in every scale from micro tanks right up to sort of 40 mil. What else? Naval, of course, has preoccupied me quite a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I've got fairly sort of universal tastes in gaming. There's a few things that I'm not that keen on, but and some rule sets I actually, which maybe are not particularly realistic, but always gave a fun gaming experience. I stuck to. So I liked Flames of War for quite a while. I haven't played it for a long time, but I mean, it's not really that realistic, but it was a fun night at the club, and I did go to a couple of little clubs where they were focusing on things like Flames of War. So there was a wee local shop that used to run a games night every week. I used to go to that for a few years. So yeah, a lot of stuff, Ken.
Yeah, and it sounds like you move around scales. Are you stuck on 28s like a lot of people, or do you drift around?
No, that's actually a big problem for me. Actually, if I've got a sort of weakness, is that when I get into a period, I tend to do it in more than one scale, which is pretty stupid.
Yeah.
So for example, with the naval stuff, I've got sailing ships, if you like. Anglo-Dutch is particularly my interest, but I've got them in 12400, I've got them in 14800, I've got them in 1200, I've got them in 600. It's daft, but you can't help yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got plenty of room for storage then? Because it sounds like your figure collection's rather large.
It's big. I have got I've got a fairly large kind of storage area. I've commandeered the garage. I have the loft, and I have yes. The short answer is I've got storage. Yeah, but it's finite, like everyone's, as I can see from your shelves behind you. Yeah. I try not to have wargaming stuff in the house, believe it or not. Yeah. I like to keep the sort of living environment wargaming free. So it's confined to spaces that don't interrupt anybody else. So and that suits my wife.
Yeah, it's we've got. I've mentioned this many times on the show, but there are some amazingly tolerant partners out there for wargamers. Because I mean, I'm in my games room now, a bit like yours. I've got a 12 foot by 6 foot table, and about a sixth of it is my podcast studio. Then I've got figures set up on another side with photographs. Then I've got a load of 6mm ACW I'm rebasing in another bit, and then a load of God knows what over there. So we can be, given a flat surface, we can be as wargamers. We have the ability to fill that flat space in a second.
Acquisitive, I think, territorially acquisitive.
Yeah. We would have been awesome in the days of Empire because we would just seen a flat bit of land and nicked it.
We'll have
that. Yeah, I'm just gonna put me 28mm Sumerians on there. Don't worry. Yep. Oh, it's mine now. I've used it. So one of the features that we do on the show is it's called the Venn diagram of wargaming, and you've kind of answered it a little bit already, but it's something that we always do, and it's quite interesting to see how people's gaming habits fits into the Venn diagram. And it's just an opportunity for you to kind of break down the hobby into 4 sections, which is wargamer, painter, collector, and historian, and which ones are the biggest part of the hobby for you, and how that affects your gaming.
Right, that's a really good question. So the 4 parts you said there were wargamer, collector, painter, and historian. Well, I think the emphasis or the focus for me has changed a bit over the years. I'd never classed myself as a historian. I'm just a guy that's curious and interested in stuff. Yeah. I'd never set myself up as being a historian. But, if you do a bit of research and into some of the sort of dark, dusty corners that I do, it's not mainstream, a lot of the stuff I'm into. You do pick up and accrue a certain amount of knowledge that other people are interested in. So that's always occupied a fair amount of my time. I don't do as much painting now as I used to. I can definitely say that bit has decreased below 25%. Partly because over the years I've painted so much stuff, I'm a bit fed up with it. If truth be told, I much prefer painting a ship now than painting a figure. But I do still paint a lot of figures, but nowhere near what I used to. And I don't have the energy to put the detail in that I used to put in. So when I look at something I painted maybe 20 years ago and I look at what I'm painting now, I think I was a better painter then than I am now. It's nothing to do with my eyes or being old or anything. It's just I can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered with it. So if it looks good, it's a curious thing, Ken. I don't. You do a lot of photography as well as I do, but there's an inverse proportional relationship in detail versus photography. I've found that the more detail that a figure has in terms of paint layers, highlighting, etc., the less well it photographs on a large game. So when you see a big game on the table, the units that pop out are the ones that are more boldly painted with less detail than the ones that are better painted with more detail. They sort of suck light in. Yeah. The high detail stuff sucks light in, and the other stuff seems to exude a bit of light. Now, I don't know what the physics of that is, but because I photograph a lot of stuff, and I've noticed that, and it's not a one-off, it's a common trend. So that's another reason why I excuse myself for doing less detail these days.
Good man. Good man. You can see, I know exactly where you're coming from, because I will paint something and I'll go, that's all right, that lad, that's not bad, that. And then I got a photograph and it looks like, something I did at primary school in painting session. And then you change the light level and the light source and the angle that the light's coming in, and then suddenly you just get it right and it pops. But you don't have that opportunity to do the lighting and the angles and so much on a big table, which is why, as you say, they kind of disappear.
No, I mean, the macro sort of photographs of, big diorama type, panorama type photographs of games. I mean, obviously, you need to get all the Coke cans and all the crap that's always on a table out Otherwise, you have to airbrush it out afterwards. But the setup's important. But getting those bigger shots, it's the units that pop out are not the ones that you would automatically pick up and say, "Oh, that's wonderfully painted," but it looks great on the table. So there is
Yeah.
some kind of inverse proportional. I don't know what you would call it ratio there.
And you interestingly said that you kind of reckon that you've peaked in terms of painted performance and on the downslope, as we all are, unfortunately. Has that led you to buy painted figures or commission painted figures, or have you just kind of stayed where you are with your collection?
I rarely. I went through a phase of buying stuff off eBay and then deciding that was pretty stupid, because what I was doing was buying it and then repainting it, and then you thought, what's the
Yeah.
point? You could have bought the lead in the first place, probably for the same price. So I don't do that. I don't really have many commissions from other painters, although there are many painters that I really do admire.
Mm.
But I feel that if I've got the ability to do it myself, I'll
Yeah.
do it myself, and then it'll be as good as I can do. It's not somebody else's work. And there's been a few horror stories over the years of people claiming to have painted things that were painted by other people, and I think that's a shame.
Yeah, definitely. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the historian and the painter. What about the wargamer and the collector in you?
Well, collector, I actually am probably at the stage where I need to start offloading some of the stuff I've got, so that my family, when I'm going, don't have the misfortune of having to say, "Is this worth anything?" How well should we sell this on eBay or just put it in a skip? But no, more seriously, I don't. The only things I collect really are things that I've done myself. And as far as wargaming is concerned, I did a lot of solo wargaming during COVID, particularly, and I quite enjoy a solo wargame because you can win and lose at the same time. It's great. And I would probably like to do a wee bit more gaming, but it's just having the time, Ken, and it's having other people with the time. So it's not just when you're available, maybe the people you want to game with are not available. So it's yeah, I love to wargame. I love the narrative part of wargaming. I love the story of the game. I'm not a factor dude. I like the narrative.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to go. Are you still working, or is wargaming your whole thing?
No, I'm not working now. I'm at the stage where work is in the past, which is good. So wargaming is pretty much all that I'm doing these days. But I mean, I'm writing.
Yeah.
So that's something I really enjoy, is writing and doing research. So I'd much prefer to be doing that probably than anything else. Writing and research, and I do like to write rules, and I do like to sort of do books that are informative, particularly in a period where there's not as much readily available source material as some other periods. I've made a small contribution to increasing the pool of data that's there, and that. So these are things I like to do. Yeah.
Have you thought about getting the guitar back out and doing a few comeback gigs?
Well, actually, I was just doing a bit of Yorkshire Bebop Deluxe before I came on here. I still play every day, but only for my own amusement. So I do have guitars that are in fact 2 or 3 guitars just sitting off camera here. So I still have all that gear, but I don't want to do it publicly anymore.
Excellent. Well, there's yourself, myself, Jared from 20-sided Gamified in the States. He plays a bit of guitar as well.
Right.
So a little competition for the listeners. Let's have a me, Barry, and Jared get together like the Wargaming 3. We want a name for our group. That's gonna be the test for the listeners. This episode is, let's have a name for a group of wargamers playing mid-80s soft rock.
Let's hope, well, whatever the suggestions are, Ken, are broadcastable.
Well, to be fair, everything gets broadcast on this show.
Fair enough.
As listeners to Brews of the Binyard will know, I think every 4th word wasn't a swear word in the last episode, so people will be.
I've done quite well so far. I don't think I've
You've
sold
done very
lots.
well. You've done very well.
Yeah.
You've done very well. These interview episodes are supposed to be the clean ones.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I'll behave.
You'll behave. Good lad. So just before we finish this section off, do you do much on social media? Are you on Facebook, on Twitter, and all that sort of thing?
I am on. I was a very late sort of adopter of social media. I was convinced to actually get on Facebook and put some stuff up there by Clarence Harrison, who is a sort of creative partner of mine in the States. And Clarence suggested that Facebook was reaching more people than maybe other types of internet locations. So I mean, I ran a forum called Fighting Talk, which I thought was a rather good name for a Wargames forum. Not my name, actually. It was suggested to me by a friend. But I ran that for nearly 20 years. But it was getting so bombarded by bots in the end that I had to shut it down. I mean, the bot, it was actually taking up all the bandwidth of the site. And I also found that other sort of locations, traditional locations like TMP and stuff, were just getting old and smelly looking, and not really a great place to hang out. So Facebook's been pretty good, and it seems quite immediate. I mean, I know it's probably old hat now to anyone under 50, but it's good. There's a lot of wargamers there, and it's reasonably community minded, I think, which is good.
Yeah, no, excellent to see. Right, well, we're going to take a quick break for the audience now, and we'll be back very shortly with part 2. Well, we're in part 2, and we've not done one of these regular interview episodes since John Savage before Christmas, I think. No, Paul Mackay in January we did. So I always like to have a little, because this is a big game podcast. We're drowning in medieval skirmish games at the moment, and we're kind of waving to shore, going, "No more, please." But so I always, this podcast has always been about the big game and big units on a table. So I always like to kind of have a quick chat with my guests about that. And you've got a big table at home, Barry. Are you a big game fan? Do you enjoy getting them big units out on the table?
I do, and I think there's two. You draw a distinction there just in your introduction between big units and big games, because you could have big units in a small game, and you could have small units in a big game, or you could have big units in a big game. So over the years, I've been responsible for organising or co-organising many very big games over like 2 days and sometimes 3 days. Which is always fun because the visual spectacle of that is unbeatable. But I think with those big games, what you've got to have is involvement for all the players for most of the time. Otherwise, you've just got people sitting around or listening to the radio or listening to the cricket, or and then what's the point of being at the war game? So with a big game, it needs to be inclusive. And it needs to be engaging for everybody right from the get-go. Otherwise, it's quite boring.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to have a good umpire or a good person running it who can see that maybe Dave's nodding off and he's not got much to do to get some action over that side of the table to keep everything running.
Definitely. And big units. I mean, I've tried games with. I mean, we did Napoleonic at Partisan in the old venue when it was at Kelham, where we had units of, I think, 120 to 140 figures in a battalion.
Nice.
Now, that does create the visual that you need, because it gives you the perspective of how long a line is and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, taking into account that you've got to make some adjustments for ground scale and stuff. But that can be quite challenging to do as well, because you don't get a lot of units unless you've got a mega table. If you've got really big units, you need a really, really big table to get a few of those on. But I'm very much into the spectacle of gaming. I don't like minimalist gaming really at all.
Yeah, that's good to see. And you've put biggish games and big games on at shows as well over the years. Has that been a Barry Hilton thing, or have you got a group of friends who do that with you?
Well, there's never been I've never really done anything with more than 3 or 4 people at the
Mm,
most. And most of the time when I'm at shows, people, I think because the name is the League of Augsburg, people think it's a group of people. The league, well, I mean, it's a league of one most of the time. I mean, recently I've started working with a really nice chap, Colin, and Colin's into the same things as I'm into. But there
yeah,
was never really more than two of us most of the time, so you're kind of limited because I always wanted to keep the standard of what was on the table really high. And if you're then having to paint it all and make the terrain and create the scenario and do all the kind of back of house stuff and do the, yourself, Ken, you've run lots and lots of games at shows. One of the big sort of criticisms, if you like, or contrasts that people draw between American wargaming and British wargaming is that you go to a British show and nothing much happens on the table because people are talking all the time. Whereas in American shows, or for example, if you go to Tactica in Germany, people just want to play the game.
yeah,
No chit chat, get the dice rolled, get the troops moving. But when you're only one guy, you can't do that. You can't move the
yeah,
troops and talk to the punters. It's just impossible to do it. So sometimes, people say, "Oh, nothing much has happened in this table." Yeah, well, if I could clone myself 4 times, then a bit more might happen. But anyway, it's just the way it is. I like to interact. I like to talk to people. There's nothing worse than seeing 6 big sweaty arse cracks hanging over a table. Do you know what I mean? And nobody paying any attention to
yeah,
the people who've paid to get in and see what's going on. So I
yeah,
mean, some striking it somewhere in between.
yeah. I mean, I try and cut a medium if I possibly can because don't actually normally play in my games. I go around and talk to everyone, and then I have people who are actually playing the game. So it move, but they have a chat as well to people who come up to the table. But their job is to keep the game going. My job is to maitre d' or front of house or whatever it is, and that works quite well. But it just means I don't get to play, which is not very nice.
Well, sometimes I think at a show it's quite difficult to get into the game because
Yeah,
you're almost then excluding the possibility of interacting with someone else. And if you
yeah,
don't join in the game and talk to people, then you're kind of out of that. So you're either half in or one thing or the other. But anyway, I mean, I think the shows serve a different purpose in the UK than they serve, say, in the States. And having gamed both as a punter and an exhibitor in America and Europe, Netherlands, and Belgium, and Germany, and obviously all over the UK. You get to see that gamers are gamers wherever you go, but the shows have got a slightly different feel to them.
can you remember some of your favourite big games? Have you got any that stick out in your memory?
Games that I've done or games that I've seen.
Either or.
Well, yeah, you put me on the spot. Some games that we've done that I liked. We did at Almanza way back. That was one of the first things that we ever had featured in Wargames Illustrated, and the terrain was made by another gentleman from the northeast of England, Gordon MacLean. He
Mm,
built some lovely terrain for us. I scratch built the city walls. And that, of course, is in the kind of League of Augsburg type period. That was good. I also did a Tangier game that I quite enjoyed. That was at Partisan. And then there's been so many over the years, Ken, I think.
mm,
But um, I enjoy any big game in any period by anybody
yeah,
if it's presented well.
yeah.
I just feel very much part communed with that. If that doesn't sound too poncy, and that that's an effort by guys that like what I like. So they like toy soldiers, and they've made a real great effort there. That's
Mm.
fantastic. All praise to anyone that puts the effort in.
So you did, or you do Partisan quite a lot. That seems to be the show that generates or like the black hole in the centre of the country that sucks in all these big games from all over the place.
Oh, I think there's a reason for that, and I've
Mm,
actually discussed that on a couple of podcasts
mm,
before. Because I mean, you might it's quite an innocuous kind of location. You would think Newark,
yeah.
but in fact, it's quite close to Nottingham. So, but that's not the real reason why Partisan's so popular. Duncan McFarlane used to live in Newark,
Mm,
and the Newark Irregulars were his Wargames group. And
mm,
literally, their venue was you walked out of Duncan's front door into the school opposite across a little single lane road. So
yeah.
Duncan's club was opposite his house. And Duncan also used to do all the photography for the magazine using those big plate camera things that
Mm,
he
yeah.
did for years. So everyone wanted to have their games in the magazine and to get it photographed, because Duncan didn't drive, you had to go to Newark.
Yeah.
So Newark stuck in the best games in the UK simply because people wanted others to see their work.
Mm,
And I think that's why Partisan, and it's stuck even in the
yeah.
age of digital cameras and the passing of Duncan, that's stuck. And then, of course, all those companies that are based in Nottingham make Nottinghamshire, if you like, or that part of Nottinghamshire,
Mm,
the sort of epicenter of wargaming in the UK, certainly. You could even say the world, I would say.
yeah. And you've got that also, you've got that thing where it's just off the A1 and it's about an hour and a half from Yorkshire going south and from London going north. So it's kind of in the catchment area of a lot of the wargaming community as well. It's the only time I see the people south of the avocado line
Right.
when I
Very
when
good.
I go down there. Um, but
Um,
I've done Salute recently a couple of times. 4 years in the trot I've done Salute and really enjoyed that as well. So I'm not going to slag off the southern shows.
No, not at all. I mean, Salute, I think, has changed. I didn't go to Salute this year. I used to trade at Salute. It just became too much of a schlep from Scotland, and
Yeah,
a very expensive thing to do as well.
mm,
But
yeah,
I've heard a couple of comments that it's you're now having to really work a little bit harder to try and spot the historical games at Salute. That more of the games are non-historical, which is possibly a good thing. I don't know. I mean, I prefer historical wargaming, but Salute has got a different. It's a trade show
mm,
primarily, isn't it? And it's not. I don't think it's a war games show as such. It's a trade show with war
mm,
games, whereas Partisan is a wargaming show with trade.
yeah,
They're different. They're different.
yeah. I have to say this year that when we went, I'm not mentioning the prize behind me.
All right.
Uh,
Okay, I see you've got a few medals there. I wasn't sure what that's for being PC, perhaps. Not,
Yeah,
maybe not.
yeah, right for my super large Italian Wars game.
Oh, right.
Um, yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. No, it was. Well, what it was is I deliberately put the game together to try and give the old style big game a view within a younger generation of the hobby who maybe are used to 10, 15 figures on the table. And I had loads of young kids, by young kids, I mean in the 20s,
That's
watching
young.
me, yeah, young, and going, oh, wow, I didn't realise that. Oh, look at that. And so I think there's that. If we've got people like who are prepared to go and fly the flag, or
Uh,
about 500 flags in my case in the Italian Wars, down at London, then with this, there's an audience for it out there. There's an audience for it.
well, I
Um,
mean, I think you've hit on a good point. I mean, in these days of immediate satisfaction, gratification in every avenue of life, a lot less people are probably prepared to commit to a project that involves painting 500 plus figures. Because that takes a long time, and you're not going to get them on the table and have a skirmish game in an evening or a week or something like that.
yeah,
And these days, everyone's attention is being sort of plucked constantly for something different. I mean, I think if anything, over the years, when people have asked about why have I stuck with the 17th century, am I stuck in the 17th century? Well, if you stick with something, you get a lot done.
yeah, you do.
You get a lot done and you get a lot of output, and then you've got something to show. Whereas if you just keep, butterflying from one project to another, or one period to another. You start a lot of things, but unless you're a good completer finisher, you're never going to get them finished.
Exactly. And just going back to earlier on when we were talking about big units, when I did the Italian Wars game, the lad in the middle on the papal side commands the Swiss, and he's got 600 figures, but he's only got 4 units.
Right. Okay. Now those are big, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of Swiss pike blocks in there, so I did giggle at that. So the big game section also gets the not the dregs, because that's the wrong way of describing it, but the things that don't quite fit elsewhere. So I'm going to have a quick chat about the naval side of things with you here, Barry, because it's not really going to fit in anywhere else, and I don't think we should not talk about it at all because, as you know, I'm a massive naval war gamer as well, and
Yep.
it's probably one of the niche parts of a niche hobby. So it's something that you've got big into lately, with the Mad for War stuff and the World War One naval as well. So where did that come from? Where have you started doing that recently?
I was always interested in naval wargaming, even as a kid. So that always greatly interested me. But I only sort of really, I think, got into my modern naval phase, which has probably lasted or started about 6 or 7 years ago, through my interest in the 17th century. And also that sort of led me into what I believe is the most interesting and exciting era of naval gaming, which is the Anglo-Dutch Wars. Because a lot of naval gamers, they're Nelson fixated. But of course, if you're fixated on Napoleonic naval, you've got two potential sides going in there with an inferiority complex straight away. It's like Scotland in the World Cup, isn't it? I mean, you've got the French and the Spanish expecting to be beaten, and the British will win all the time. Whereas if you look at 17th century, you've got the Portuguese, you've got the Spanish, you've got the Dutch, of course, the English, you've got the Swedes, the Danes, the French, the Venetians. They've all got big navies. Okay, some are bigger and more well developed than others, and it's much more of a competition, and it's much more. And there's also such a digression in terms of approach of ship design and all that kind of stuff. So, and the battles are epic. But it doesn't get the coverage. Why? Probably because England didn't win that many battles. It won a few, it lost a few, but it wasn't the dominant power. And that sort of fixates on another one of my sort of issues about wargaming, which is the Anglo-centricity of it all. And I don't mean that anything to do with England. I mean the British Anglo-centricity of everything seen through the lens of Wellington or Marlborough or whatever. What about the rest of the world? And when you start to see the perspective from, say, the French or the Dutch or the Germans, or the Japanese, for example, and I'm not just talking about World War II here at all, I'm talking about history. You get a totally different view, of and how we as an island and a nation were perceived. And then you get different perspectives, and I think that's really interesting. So that's the naval came through the 17th century stuff. The Dreadnought stuff I've always been kind of interested in, but I got access to, or the warfare managers got access to a range of ships, which were crying out to be released, 1/4800 scale World War One. They're exquisitely, again, another product of Yorkshire, I've got to say, but done by an extremely talented man based down in the Sheffield area. So these ships are exquisite. They're not digitally designed; they're made from stuff and then mastered and cast. I was really proud to bring, or warfare managers to bring these ships to market. So, that's all been in the last few years.
And you've done your own set of rules, haven't you, for both periods? If I think
yes,
correct.
Well, Mad for War was a bit of a vanity project for me. I just wanted a set of rules for 17th century naval, and I was delighted by the fact that the book's almost sold out now. I mean, and we did hundreds of copies. And then I did a lot of supportive scenario packs, 4-play packs, I call them. to give people games to play. So that's really picked up. And the Mad for War group, which was just started as a small outlet to let people see what the stuff looked like, it's got, 700 members or something now. I know that's not vast when you compare it to, say, a Napoleonic site that might have 10,000 members, but as you said, is it a backwater? I think what it is, I think a lot of people are interested in Navalkin, but I think it's such a fragmented interest.
Yes.
Some are gamers, some are historians, some are just tech heads and rivet counters who are just interested in the ships. So it's all fragmented. It's not a sort of cohesive group, naval wargaming.
Yeah, I did an episode with Professor David Manley, who's a big professional and hobby naval wargamer, and that was one of the big points that we talked around, is that naval wargamers can be their own worst enemies because they can be so granular with detail that it puts everybody else off. But then when somebody produces a more playable set, then the people who are into the tech side of it don't like that, and it's hard to get a...
Yeah, you've got to strike a balance. With Dreadnought is the set of rules that I'll be publishing sometime this year, which is I've already published a Dreadnought set, which is for fleet games.
Yeah,
and that's caught on pretty well. And that the internet evidence of that as well with the group that we've got going is quite strong. But from that, I've also developed a single ship version, which I'll publish this year. So I did the same process in reverse with the 17th century. I did the single ship version first, and then developed a fleet version, Rolling Thunder, after that. So this time I've done it the opposite way around. But a lot of the mechanisms are common across the two periods. But I think you cannot... you've got to strike a balance between technical or tactical accuracy and playability.
Yeah.
You could keep going for historical accuracy and levels of detail which make a game unplayable. And that's where you've got a split in the attitude of people towards your rule set. Oh, that's not realistic, or that's too technical. You've got to try and find the bite point between those two things. And I think I've managed to do that with it. Certainly the sales say that we've managed to do that. So I'm quite happy with that. No pun on sales there, incidentally. That was SALES as opposed to SAILS. But yeah, I love naval gaming. And one of the things that always makes me laugh is you get loads of wargamers that say, I don't like naval gaming. I really hate naval gaming. And then if you say to them, have you ever played a naval game? And they'll say, Nah, I've never played one. So how do you know you don't like it if you've never played one? Anyway.
I would definitely say up here with the group that I play with that our most entertaining, best games have all been naval games.
I would go along with that. Absolutely, because there's an unpredictability to it.
Yes.
And also, if you're doing Age of Sail gaming, the biggest unpredictability, of course, is the wind direction. And then you can't, you just cannot legislate for that, particularly if you're randomizing it through a game. So, I find naval games extremely satisfying intellectually and from a sort of excitement point of view. They're the best war games I've ever played.
Yeah, absolutely superb. And just coming back to the ships that you've done through the company for the World War One stuff, just for the audience who maybe haven't seen them, and I do recommend everyone goes and have a look at these because they are absolutely exquisite models. What sort of size, roughly, is a dreadnought ship in terms of?
If it's in 4800 scale, a dreadnought ship would probably be about 2 inches long.
Yeah.
So I'm doing some single ship gaming at the moment, but I'm using larger models. So I'm using 1800 scale models, which can be up to probably about 5 inches long. But of course, you've got the issues then of range and scale, and then the visual optics of ships being too close or too far away. So, these are all compromises that have to be made in all wargaming. Because ground, or when I say ground, that could be sea scale or land scale relative to the height of a figure. These things are vastly out of proportion in all war games. It's one of those suspension of disbelief issues. You've got to go over it quite quickly or it'll drive you mad.
Yeah, it's and that's another one of the topics that always comes up with stuff. When we did Jutland, well, 10 years ago now, for the anniversary, we did it on a 32 foot by 8 table, and people were still complaining that you completely out of ground scale.
Yeah,
Yes, but I can't. I can only just reach into the middle of an 8 foot table.
yeah,
I can't reach into the middle of anything bigger. So human
yeah. That's it. You got
body
the limitations.
proportions, yeah,
Yeah.
come into it as well.
Otherwise, you would have to have parallel rows of tables at say
Yeah,
6 or 8 feet wide, but multiples. It
yeah,
would end up looking like a dinner hall.
yeah. A bit
Um,
like the old Wargames holiday centre setup.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's brilliant. So yeah, those ships are absolutely amazing, and they're available on your website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the League of Augsberg website, which is the
Mm.
the stores attached to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've done that fleet action thing. I think I saw you do Run to the South or Run to the North at
Oh
one of
yeah,
the
we did the
shows.
the run
Yeah,
run to this. We did the run to the south, I think, and the run to the north. We might have done.
yeah,
So that set of rules, Dreadnought fleet battles, treats a division as the entity. That's the unit. So you're not operating single ships. You're operating 4 ships together, or 3 ships,
yeah.
or 5 ships, whatever's in the division, which allows you to do big scale actions. In a day or a half a day, so you could do Jutland in a day, the whole game. Yeah,
And having done it at one ship to one ship, it does take more than a day.
yeah, I'll bet it does.
But you see, being an engineer, a retired engineer. I'm at the more technical end of it,
Right.
so I do enjoy all that granularity. But I will still quite happily play simplified in inverted commas game, and for the joy of playing a naval game. But if I choose for the more technical side of things, just because my engineering brain's going, that shell's not going to do that at that range. If you get a fluke dice roll or something like that, so it's just for my own sanity. That is,
No, it's a broad church, and
yeah,
I mean, wargaming is you've got to. I mean, that's why probably there are so many different rule systems out from every period, where people are coming in at it from a slightly different angle and trying to create a slightly different gaming experience. But that's all to the good, I think.
yeah, oh, most definitely. Well, thanks for that, Barry. Another cracking chat on there on the naval and the big games, and we're going to take another break for the audience now before we come back for the quiz. Right, we're back in the room, and this is the bit where we get to literally quiz our guest with our set of 20 hugely regionally biased questions that will literally show you how Yorkshire Gamer you are. Not how good a gamer you are or how good you are as a person, but how Yorkshire Gamer you are. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So these answers, Barry, they're either yes or no, or one or the other. But if you want to have a chat about any of them as we go through them, please feel free to do so. And if you're not sure, go for the Yorkshire answer.
Ready.
He's ready. Question 1, go big or go home?
Oh, go big.
Go big, good lad. Question 2, contrast paints, are they great or are they a gimmick?
That's a good question. I have to not answer it shortly. I have recently converted to them.
Ooh.
So I'm using them for a variety of things, and I say they have their uses.
Yeah. That's
what I would say. Not a gimmick, but they have their uses.
No worries. I have my own opinions that people are aware of, but you see, I've lived in Yorkshire most of my life. I'm not paying for watery paint. I'll buy proper paint and put thinner in it.
I got that. I got that subtext.
Question 3, paintbrushes. Are you going all posh Winsor and Newton or Yorkshire made Pro Art?
I like Pro Art.
Good man. The boss is a friend of mine. Since he's been on the show.
Get me a discount then.
I never ask for discounts, man. I'm really bad like that. Question 4, 96 figures. Is that an army or a unit of pike?
It's a unit of pike.
Yeah. And a small unit of pike as well.
Yeah.
Question 5. A 6x4 table, would you say that was a big game or a small game?
Oh, that's a wee game, that is.
Yeah. You're doing well, Barry. You're doing very well. You've only dropped half a point so far. Question 6. You're designing a game. Are you going to go for points-based or an historical order of battle?
Historical order of battle.
The one bites the dust. Question 7. You're doing a bit of painting. You need to mix some paint. Are you going to use a wet palette or an old bit of MDF?
Actually, I'd use my thumbnail.
Oh, that is a corker. I like that. We've had some in the we've had old bits of newspaper. We've had deodorant bottle lids, but we've never had the back of a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Doesn't absorb the paint. I like your thinking there. Very, very
but
good.
It is a little bit warm, obviously, with your body heat, so you need to be quick. But
it is Scotland, though, Barry, so it'll be quite cold.
Absolutely, You're right.
Has the sun come out yet up there, mate? No.
Come on, get real.
It's fucking boiling in here. Right. So where were we up to? Oh, question 8. Undercoating figures, would you go black or white?
White now.
White now. Sounds like you used to go black.
I did, but I got fed up with it. Mm-hmm. It sucks the paint down too much. It sucks the colours down too much.
How have you? Right. It's interesting. Right. We'll dwell on this for a second because I do black all the time. And the problem I find with white is the joins between colours. So with black, you've already got a natural shadow there. So how do you cope with that with white? You know, you've got a blue against a black or something like that.
Okay, so what I do now, the reason I went for white, I don't go for pure white. I don't use pure white even when I'm painting. So I would undercoat in a buff or undercoat in an ivory or something like that. Nowadays what I'll do is I'll flat paint the figure, I'll block it in, and then I'll start contrasting, and I'll use contrasting washes around the edges. If you're careful with them, you'll get the right definition.
Yeah. Top painting tips on this podcast as well. Drinking now. We're on to not booze. But question 9. Hot drink. Would you have Yorkshire tea or dirty mucky coffee?
No, Yorkshire tea.
Oh, good lad. Can you see the regional bias in these questions yet?
I do see. I mean, they are slightly leading. If I can just make that comment. But anyway.
Oh dear. Question 10. Wargames units. If it's historically accurate, do you like your figures tightly packed or socially distanced?
I like them reasonably tightly packed. Yeah.
I don't like it when I see a pike block and everyone's like there's a figures gap between everyone.
No, I don't like that. No,
Mr. Man on horse is going to go. There's a fucking big gap there.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like the attendance at a Partick Thistle match. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's an obscure football reference for the Americans. Right. So we're on to the second half. Would you prefer a 2-hour club game or a weekend monster game?
Weekend monster game, hands down.
Excellent. The Nick Skinner Memorial question. Avocado. Are they just posh mushy peas?
They're pointless.
Pointless. Yeah, excellent. You can have a point for that.
Yeah.
My lad's come back from university at Bristol and he's staying with us for a while. And he eats avocado. And I said, you were born in Leeds, lad. You were born in Leeds. You can't bring avocados up here.
The question would just be why? Yeah. Avocado. Why? Why do you eat them? Well, I mean, they're pointless.
We're going to have people with pitchforks and burning torches outside our house if they see we're eating avocado. We're not in Ilkley. We're not in Ilkley or Harrogate. Oh, my word. Question 13. Round dice, spherical dice. Are they allowed or banned on your table?
I didn't even know they existed.
I'm just trying to find... Oh, there we go.
What, are they weighted in the inside or something? Oh, Jesus. Nah. It looks like a Super
You can hear the rattle.
Looks like a Subbuteo ball.
It does. It does. Yes, very kindly. That was donated to me at Salute after I'd slagged them off for about 3 years. So, uh, question 14. This is on Wargames measurements. And would you like glorious imperial inches or dodgy French money?
No, it's got to be inches for me.
Oh, excellent. It is a weird thing how most Wargames rule are imperial measures. It must be an old hangover from original rules.
I do it all my stuff. I've made a concession by occasionally referring to the equivalent in metric, but no, I continue to use inches for War Games rule measurement.
Yeah, it is remarkably prevalent still in the UK. I mean, I always talk, or I've talked on the show before, that I would always do my calculations and everything, because I used to investigate road traffic accidents. I would do all my calculations in metric. Yet when I came to give evidence in court, I had to do everything imperial, because if I said, and the vehicle was travelling at approximately 23.4 kilometres per hour, the judge would look at me over his glasses and goes, What's that in miles per hour?
In real money.
In real money. I don't want any of this foreign muck in this court.
Yeah, I'm afraid I am a traditionalist when it comes to imperial weights as well, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm very much in the old school.
Yeah, give me a pound of onions any day. Any day. Question 15. Interesting to see where you go on this one. Do you like a good table and a set of rules, like a casualty table or a penetration table, or do you prefer a dice-based mechanism?
Ah, right, okay. Do you mean dice-based as in you would use the dice to mark casualties on the table? Is that what you mean?
Oh, more of a results base. So a 6 kills rather than you roll 2d6 and cross-reference on a table to see the number of casualties.
Oh no, I think the former. I don't like the cross-referencing thing.
Yeah,
I don't think.
No worries.
If I understood it.
Yeah. That's it is the one that most people go. Oh.
Yep.
I need to change. I've only been doing it for 5 years, and that's the same question. I really should change
Change that question.
It's very rare that a question. I think there's only been 3 questions that have ever been changed. So it's a bit like the Catholic Church. It takes 1,000 years for me to change anything.
You're doing that Yorkshire thing, Ken. It's I know what I like and I like what I know.
Exactly. I'll make up the other buggers understand it. Never mind changing the question. I'll make them understand it.
I used to have a boss that used to say, he was from Yorkshire, and he used to say, I can make this question simple, but I can't make you understand that.
Yep, that's very good. I like that. Question 16. 28 mil. Is it king?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Question 17, mate. Unpainted miniatures on the table, yes or no?
Absolutely a hanging offence.
Hanging offence, excellent. And football, do you follow the football? You mentioned Partick Thistle, so if you know them, you must know a bit of football.
Well, I don't follow it closely, but I am aware of the game coming from Central Scotland, yes.
Yeah. If you had to choose, would you go for Bradford City or Leeds United?
Oh, I think bearing in mind that I just watched the damned United, I'd have to go for Bradford.
Oh, good man. Dirty Leeds.
Right.
Dirty Leeds. Question 19. Would you choose Yorkshire or the other place over the hill?
I didn't think there was anywhere beyond Yorkshire, so I'll choose Yorkshire.
Oh, excellent. Good answer. You can get a point for that. And final question. Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil? Yes or no?
Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil? Yes, I think.
Are you a fan of what's kind of the you were umming and ahhing there? What you thought?
Well, I find the approach exploitative of the young people that buy their stuff overpriced, and the endless iterations just smack of commercial exploitation. That's products are fine, but overpriced, and a bit cynical. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
poss-
I know exactly where you're coming from there. I know
yeah.
exactly where you're coming from. It brings people into the hobby, which is a positive thing. And maybe when they come to the historical side of things, they go, "Oh, this is quite cheap."
Well, quite possibly, and I mean, I'm sure the origins of the company were completely focused on enthusiasts, but
Mm,
so somewhere along the line, accountants have got hold of it.
yeah,
So that's what it says to me.
exactly. Well, you did extremely well there, Barry. 87.5%,
Oh,
which
not
is
bad.
maybe a bit too Yorkshire for somebody from East Kilbride, but
Well, my
it's
mother
not
would
bad.
have been proud of the score. It sounds like an A on my report card, so I'll take it.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you very much for that. So the next bit of the show, we're just kind of just getting some favourites from yourself, really, or not a favourite in this particular next bit, which is War Games Room 101. And I always give my guests a chance to have a little bit of a rant about something within the hobby, if they've got something. And what I do like about this hobby is that people can have the weirdest and strangest things that they absolutely hate. And hopefully, I'm not going to take away yours. But one of my favourites was Giles Allison when he was talking about unpainted flag edges, and he went, bless him, and he went for a while, and it was totally understandable. So, have you got something, Barry, on your list there?
Yeah, I mean that's quite an interesting one. I would probably have gone for that. I don't know that I hate it, but mine's a little bit more kind of fundamental. I think it cheats. I hate people who cheat.
Yeah,
I just in a war game or any game, but particularly in a war game, I just think there's no self respect there. I mean, why would you cheat in a war game? Why would you do that? I mean, why would you sort of angle your move a little bit further than you're supposed to, or pretend that your dice fell out your hand when you rolled something that you didn't want to roll? And these people that have got a set series of reasons why whatever they did or got caught at wasn't their
yeah.
fault, and it was a complete accident. I bloody hate cheats. I
Hopefully, it's not
really
something you come across in your regular gaming with friends.
No, not at all, not at all. But over the years, I've come across some instances of cheating beyond. You have got me started here. I've got to
Go,
say,
go. It's all right. We like a
I'm
bit of
going,
a rant.
I'm going to anonymize it, right? But I
Yeah,
will give a couple of examples of things.
yeah.
There was a bloke at the club that I used to go to when we played WRG Ancients. And he used to sit constantly sitting, and you probably can't see my hands, but I've got dice here. And he would roll the dice at the side of the table, roll, 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 when nothing was happening. And I said to him, "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm rolling out the ones. I, I'm rolling out the ones." I mean, what? What is that all about? And actually, things like that. Or there was I remember we had a meltdown once in a game. It was a big weekend game we were doing when a battalion of the old guard routed, and this guy just refused to. He said that would never have happened. That can't happen. No, no, we can't. And he was absolutely spitting. He stopped me out. We can't have the old guard routing. There's no way the old guard can be routing. These rules are rubbish. And because the old guard had routed, I mean, had anybody told him about Waterloo? I'm thinking, what? You're supposed to know about the period, friend. So things like that. I don't know. It's funny, Republic to Empire. I wrote Republic to Empire, which has proved to be quite a popular set of rules over the years. I don't put enough heat under it as a rule set, but it's probably sold more than any other book that I've written over the 10 or 12 years it's been out. But I actually wrote that with certain players in my gaming group in mind to avoid the cheating. So a lot of the mechanisms in Republic to Empire are specifically to stymie cheats.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and I would put it through. I will not say who these people were. I don't game with them anymore, but it was really there. I would put it through the proof test, write the mechanism, then we'd play it in the big weekenders. Did that work? Did that stop the cheating? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So cheating, absolutely, that's going in there.
Oh, it's absolutely classic. I like that, and to have gone as far as to modify your rule set to cut it out. That is classic. I do like that. Thank you.
Ken, I wouldn't even say modify. I constructed it. That's the scaffold. That's the scaffold of the rules. It's not a modification.
You need one of those little, like they put stickers on album covers and stuff like that. Contains the hits and whatever. Not for cheats.
Yeah, absolutely not for cheats. There you go. I'll put nothing else in the room. That'll do. Just put all the cheats in there.
Oh, absolutely fantastic, mate. Thank you very much for that. And we finish off with our Desert Island war game, and it's just like the feature on Radio 4, where you get to take a number of discs onto your desert island. You get the works of Shakespeare and the Bible, and then you get to take a desert island game, and there's no limitations on it, mate. You can take whatever you want. What would be the war game that you would take on your desert island with you?
Well, when you say the war game, you mean an actual setup that I could take to play, right? Yeah. Okay, without doubt, it would be the 4 days battle of June the 1st to June the 4th, 1666, the biggest naval epic of all time. I know people say Lepanto or Actium or whatever, or
I'm shaking. You've said Lepanto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Stop it. Or Jutland, but nothing beats the 4 days battle. That's the war game for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, most of the audience, including myself, won't be familiar with that. So, what's the story behind that battle?
Well, it was a sea fight between the navy of Charles II and the Dutch Republic, and the English began the battle with 56 ships, and the Dutch with 83. And they fought each other for 4 days. So at night they fought all day, and then they would anchor up at night and then start again the next day. And they did that for 4 days. And in the end, Prince Rupert arrived on the 4th day. Another one of my, I wouldn't say he's a hero, but he's one of the most fascinating guys in history. Amazing. The polymath Prince Rupert. Everyone says the dashing cavalier cavalry commander. That's a tiny bit of his life. He spent most of his time as an admiral in the fleet. So he was the Lord High Admiral or equivalent Admiral General at Sea. Rupert arrived on day 4 to make it a sort of losing draw for the English, but epic sea fight where the English Navy was down to, at one point, 14, 15 active ships from 60. But they were still fighting on. Full of heroes, amazing battle. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's definitely one to look up. I'd like that. Prince Rupert's a bit like Garibaldi. There's so many different layers to them. And I'm always fascinated by reading about. I always wonder how the hell they survived, because they always seem to be at the front getting shot at. But
he was mental. He was absolutely mental. Prince Rupert once stopped a mutiny on board an English ship by walking on and picking one of the mutineers' ringleaders up by the neck and hanging him over the side and telling him that he would drop every other man over the side like the way he was going to drop this guy unless they stopped the nonsense. And they stopped the nonsense.
Brilliant.
So, big lad as well.
Leadership, not management.
Yeah.
Like it. So we've transported that onto your island now. You can take a book with you as well. What would be your book that you would take?
It will be no surprise to say that the book that I would take would be The 4 Days Battle by Frank L. Fox, who is an amazing American writer, now deceased, expert on the Anglo-Dutch Wars. And his book, The 4 Days Battle, is a go-to book for me. It reads like a novel.
Oh, brilliant.
It's about 400 pages long.
Yeah.
It's full of the most detailed minutiae, and you as an engineer would really appreciate the detail on gun calibers, shot weights, powder charges, levels and all that kind of stuff. But getting all that detail in and it reading like a novel is amazing.
That's because I don't know if you've ever read it, Barry, but there's a book called Jutland, The Analysis of the Fighting.
I don't think I've read that. Who wrote it?
No, I can't remember. It's a German chap, but it is potentially the most boring book in the entire world with the most interesting facts in it. So literally, it's like chapter 1 1412 10-inch hit from this ship onto this ship, and it goes through everything: the angles, the damage that it caused, the trajectory of the turrets when it was fired, and it in really really granular detail. And you think, "Phew, tough work that." Next chapter will be interesting. 15-inch shell from Warspite hitting, and it's like that all the way through, and it's about that thick.
I'd read that.
From an information point of view, and probably from a technological point of view, it's probably the most valuable book to read on the Battle of Jutland, because it tells you exactly about the effects of the guns and how and when and why they were fired and all that sort of stuff. But God, it drags on. Oh my!
I'll have to have a look for it now.
Yeah, I can't. It's probably. I think it's in the other room. But yes, I'll send you a link with it on.
Very good.
So finally, for the desert island, you can take a Wargames unit, and that can be it can be one of your own. It can be one that you've coveted. You want to nick off somebody else. Whatever you want to do. What's the one Wargame unit that you would take?
Right, okay, so bear in mind what my book choice was and what my wargame choice was. It's no surprise that my wargame unit would be the White Squadron of the English fleet at the 4 Days Battle, which was full of characters and heroes. So there would be 19 ships in that squadron, so that's the unit. And they were the Fighting White, is in my opinion a brilliant squadron, which got absolutely decimated over the 4 days. But that would be my unit.
And do you have them represented yourself on the
table? I have them in several scales, Ken.
Scales, good lad, good lad. That's what we like to hear. Well, thanks very much for that. That's the short features section, and we're going to move on to the big topic and the discussion very shortly. Well, we're in the final section now, and the big topic, as we like to call it. And we're going to talk in this final section to Barry about the League of Augsberg and his rules and what have you. And it's not a period that many people know about. And, we talked about it earlier on when Barry saw the game at Claymore, when it was like, hey, what's this? What's this? But before we start on any of this, Barry, we've got to talk about something, because I love a big Fanian, and you do seem to like a big flag. So,
indeed. Wondered where that was going there.
Yeah. Is it a thing, mate? Are you a big flag man?
I am a big flag man. There's no doubt about it. In fact, they are now called heroic scale. I believe somebody coined the term, because nice. I've done oversized flags for a long time. It just started as a thing a way back. Actually, I started it when I painted some English Civil War front rank figures I was talking about earlier on, way back in 1986. And I decided to make the flags out of cloth.
Yeah.
It was the first time I'd ever done that. So I started that way back in 86. And it came out pretty well. I mean, I developed the technique over the years and refined it. But the flags were quite big. I think they were oversized by accident, but I liked the look.
Yeah.
And then I just carried on with it. So, but if you're actually making them out of material, it's cotton. When you treat it, paint it, pull it, and all that kind of stuff, the big size shrinks somewhat. It doesn't physically shrink, but of course all the folds make it look slightly less large. Of course, if you have this equivalent printed on paper and then try and fold it, it's going to look much bigger. So I tend not to make my paper flags as big as I make my cotton flags. So if I'm hand painting them on cotton, I do make them about 50 by 50 or bigger in some cases. But on paper, I usually make them about 45 square, something like that.
Well, the rules that we're about to talk about beneath the lily banners took a bit of a life of their own in the previous podcast, and they ended up being called beneath the massive banners.
I'll take that.
I'll take that, and then Alex Sutherland reckoned that he'd been out with a girl called Lily Banners.
Very good.
In Sheffield in the 1980s. So they've already the rules have already gained a legendary status on this podcast. So it's an honour to speak to you about them in actual life. So I think the best place to start with this, mate, is because like I just said in the introduction, a lot of people aren't that familiar with the period of history. So I think the first thing to kind of talk about is what time period are we talking about, and what were the characteristics of the warfare of that time?
Okay, so very briefly, without boring everyone to death, we're talking about the period from roughly the restoration of the monarchy in the UK, 1660, to about 1720, where that's the end of the Great Northern War between Russia and Sweden, Russia and its allies in Sweden. So it's a period of military evolution. It's a period of the formalisation of structure. So, in terms of size of battalions, number of companies, size of field forces, and a professionalisation or a nationalisation in some respects of the military machine. So, going from private owned and funded units to government funding, if you like, but not very efficient or let's say honest government funding. But anyway, it's a period of evolution, and also muskets changing from being matchlock, i.e. lit by a little fuse, to being flintlock, more efficient. The removal of the pike from the battle line largely, and a sort of formalisation of cavalry tactics. So it's when armies started to become professional, effectively.
Yeah, because when you look at the history of some of the famous British regiments, this is the time that they officially form, isn't it? In that period.
You mentioned there about the formation of British units about this time. One of the really interesting sort of aspects of this period is the fact that many of these regiments that you mentioned formed well before this time. But the British Army didn't really start winning any battles until 1695. So what's interesting is some of the biggest battles that were fought by British regiments, like Landen, Steenkirk, Valcour, these battles don't appear on any British battle honours for any regiments because we didn't win.
Under the carpet.
So the first battle honour that you see appearing on British colours is Namur in 1695, which was actually a siege and assault. But before that, the army had been involved in several massive battles, bigger than Waterloo.
Wow.
Yeah, but they don't appear, even when the regiments performed well, because the army lost, and it wasn't a British army, it was an allied army where the British were a component, same as the Napoleonic Wars. They don't have the battle honours. So there's another little known fact. So we only started putting up our battle honours when we started winning. So that's interesting in of itself, I think.
Yeah, and of course, just before that, we were fighting each other, weren't we?
Well, yeah. Are you talking about Scotland and Yorkshire there?
No.
Oh, the Civil War.
The Civil
War. Well, yes, indeed. And I mean, of course, like British regiments, interestingly, Scotland and England had two separate establishments up until 1707. And so there were Scottish regiments under the Scottish establishment, but there were also Scottish regiments on the English establishment. So England had its own Scottish regiments, Scotland had its own regiments, and Ireland had its own establishment for Irish regiments. And then when there was the Union of the Crowns, the Active Union, rather, not the Union of the Crowns, but the Active Union in 1707, then they all became British regiments. So yeah, that's also an interesting part of the period's attraction.
Yeah, and it's full of. You kind of touched on it there. It's full of huge battles, isn't it? And fairly major wars as well that just seem to. And going back to your Anglo-centric thing, the only ones that I really am aware of until, and I'll come to it in a second about a little project I've done, are the ones involving Churchill.
Right, of course, he's my bête noir, if you like, Churchill, who I think one of history's biggest chancellors. But there you go. Yeah, I had to get that, and I just can't resist having a pop at Johnny Churchill. But seriously, well, Churchill had in fact served in the Navy when he was young. He was a junior officer in the Navy. He'd served in the French army, as many British or Scots, English, Irish, and Welsh officers did, where they got their training under Louis XIV. He was at Sedgemoor. And then, of course, he was not liked by William III. William III didn't trust him because obviously he betrayed his best mate and drinking buddy, King James. Churchill and James were drinking, and I think you would call it hooring buddies, maybe. I don't know if you like to say that these days. But that's exactly what they were. And when he dropped the king like a stone, William didn't trust him at all. So Churchill actually proposed his own private operation in Ireland in 1690, whereby he would pull the regiments together, organise the logistics, do a little invasion down in Cork and Kinsale, and if it came off, then all to the good. If it failed, William was going to fling him in the tower. So Churchill's history as a commander is long. I mean, by the time we get to Queen Anne's reign and Blenheim and Malplaquet, Oudenarde and all that kind of stuff, I mean, he's well in his 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of really knocking on for a general at that time. So, that big success came very, very late in his life, largely due to a lot of the bad political decisions he'd made earlier in his life, So you've got a lot of big characters. You got William the Third, or Willem van Oranje, if you want to call him by his proper name. And you've got mad commanders like John Cutts, and Cutts is an amazing guy. Wounded in the head 3 times, bankrupt to the tune of over £2 million, married like a 75-year-old widow to try and get her money when he was in his 30s. I mean, everyone talks about Salamander Cutts, and it's held up as a, why is he called Salamander? Because he's a fire-breathing hero. He was mental. I mean, the guy was mad. He was off his head. And I think that's the reason why he was called Salamander, because some people thought he was like a lizard. And that's actually a quote from Parliament.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Hansard or whatever, if it existed then. But seriously, that's why I love this period. It's full of guys on the make. They're just on the make. It's not about nationalism. It's not about England versus France. It's not about Scotland versus England. It's just about a lot of rich dudes trying to get richer. And they'll sell themselves to anybody. And they'll fight for anybody. And they change sides. A lot of them change sides a lot of the time, so you'll find, even guys like General Mackay, who commanded the government army at Killiecrankie, held up as a famous sort of Presbyterian type pro-Williamite commander. He'd fought as a French general in his younger years. And he went over to the Dutch after fighting for the French. These guys were jobbing soldiers, they were mercenaries. They were just making money. But what history's done is it's completely whitewashed all that and then tried to recut it as religious wars or fight of good against evil or whatever. That's nonsense. Complete nonsense.
So for the people who aren't maybe that into it, what are the major wars? You mentioned the Great Northern War at the end of it. I guess we've got the succession wars in there as well.
Yeah, so if you quickly buzz through the wars, so English campaign in Tangier from the late 1670s to 1684 when they abandoned the place. Sedgemoor in 1685, which was a rebellion and concurrent with the Argyll rebellion in Scotland at the same time, which incidentally was much more successful than the Sedgemoor rebellion, but they both ended up getting their heads chopped off, Argyll and Monmouth. And then you've got basically the what's called the 9 Years' War, or the War of the League of Augsberg, from 1689 to 1697. But that also includes the Irish campaigns. So big battles in there, like Neerwinden, 80,000 French against 60,000 Allies.
Wow.
That's as big as Waterloo, if not bigger. You've got big battles like Steenkirk. You've got battles in northern Italy like Staffarda. Prince Eugen, Prince Eugene, if you like, was fighting then. And then that stops in 1697, and then within 2 or 3 years, it's a continuation of those wars into the War of the Spanish Succession, sometimes called the Malburian period here, which again I think is incredibly misnamed, but there you go. And then that's concurrent with the Great Northern War between Sweden and Russia, which lasted from 1700 to 1721. Now that truly is a blitzkrieg epic war. So it's enormous. It's just Europe continually at war. And you've got the Turks in there as well. Of course, you've got the imperialists fighting the Turks, Vienna and all that stuff, Zenta, battles like that, all happening between 1680 and 1700.
Yeah, it's an absolutely massive and rich period that is quite underplayed, for certain. So, what we talked about that game that you mentioned earlier on at Claymore that you kind of got really interested in. What was the journey from then onwards to really get into the period?
Trying to find source material, and there was very little of it. I mean, and again, another Yorkshireman who's made a massive contribution. I like to keep the Yorkshire team going, King, because I know that's important to you. But Alan Safferson, who ploughed a very lonely furrow, digging up information on units, campaigns, uniforms. Alan produced a series of booklets. They were all kind of A5 size little soft cover booklets in the 80s, which are now quite sought after. In fact, I've got Alan's. I hope he's still alive, but I don't think he is. I think he was quite ill a few years ago. I have his archive. He bequeathed it to me. So, and I got it through Heinz Figures. They passed it on to me. So I have all Alan's papers, but he was a great source. Charles Grant, who is a friend of mine, that's Charles Grant Jr., Charles Stuart Grant. He also wrote a lot on the period in those early sort of years. And there was a couple of guys. There was a chap in America who's now passed away, Dan Shaw, who was also a contributor. But it was all little bits and pieces that had to be pulled together and explored. But that was part of the excitement and the attraction for me. It wasn't a well-trod path. And it's like, I tell you what I could use as an analogy. I got into Queen, the band, in 1974 before anybody else I felt was into them. See, when everybody started the Pylon and Another One Bites the Dust and all that shit, I mean, I thought, they're not my band anymore. Everybody likes them now. Well, that's the way I felt about this period. Nobody was into it, but I was into it. And I thought, this is great. It's a wee corner of wargaming that I can just dig away at and enjoy myself. But it's kind of caught on a bit, which is good. I mean, I've been plugging away at it for 30 odd years now, but it does have appeal for other people, which is good.
Those early pamphlets that you were talking about, and I think I've got a little project, 10 mil, would you believe, for the Piedmontese army around the time of Prince Eugene, and I've got a little pamphlet book. There was an article in one of the Wargames magazines about the Piedmontese army in the 1704 or something like that, and I always remember that, and I've always had a soft spot for the army, and I bought the pamphlet at the time, which is kicking around somewhere. But they can take. There was Rawkins was another one for the Napoleonics. Where he got all his information, I've got no idea. But you could buy this book, and it was typed with hand-drawn stuff in it, and the information was just absolutely amazing. They must have lived in the library to get that sort of stuff, and Safferson as well.
Like long sort of hours of research, and they must. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was visits to the British Library and stuff like that. and I know that still goes on by several people that I'm friendly with. For example, there's Mark, who's been writing books for Helion recently. In fact, he did his thesis on, I think, the British Army in the 1680s or something. So it's still the kind of period where you have to dig around, but you can genuinely uncover nuggets that are new, people haven't seen before. And that was attractive as well. So that was where it all started. I got the inspiration from guys like the man that put the game on at Claymore, Alan Safferson, Charles Grant, Dan Shaw, these guys. And then it just grew from there.
Do you think that information, well, I mean, it is, information's easier to get now. And in those times, it was picking up that gen of a pamphlet or whatever to give you that little bit of information to then move on to the next stage. And maybe that's why it wasn't as popular then, because we'd had the Waterloo film and everyone writes about Waterloo, and fucking Abra had the hit at the Eurovision. So, do you think that's maybe why? Because it is interesting. It's got all the characters, it's got all the battles, but it never quite became Napoleonics.
I think because it didn't become Napoleonics because partly what you're saying, but also because the British weren't winning. That's probably the main reason. I mean, because almost everyone's heard of Marlborough.
Yeah.
But how many people know that King William III was on the battlefield leading his army in numerous battles? Everyone's heard about the Boyne. I mean, the Boyne's done to death. But seriously, William led the army at Neerwinden, Landen, if you want to call it that. He led it at Steenkirk. I mean, this was the king, Stadtholder of Holland and also the King of England on the battlefield leading an army of 60,000 men. I mean, that's pretty epic. But who knows that? But everybody knows about John Churchill and 15,000 British troops at Blenheim. So, but William lost consistently. That was the problem. So great statesman, master politician, not a brilliant general, undoubtedly brave.
Yeah.
But he wasn't English, he was Dutch, and he didn't win. So, that he's not getting his place.
Yeah, I think, there are similarities that I can see between the League of Augsberg period, as we've talked about it, that period of history, and the Italian Wars as well, because the Italian Wars isn't popular in the UK because the source material is all in Italian.
Yeah.
And other than a couple of mercenary units, we weren't really involved. King Henry had other things going on at the time. But that because it's not in English and because it's in Dutch or German or whatever, or French or whatever language, there was traditionally it's not in English, I'm not reading it, or it's not in English, I'm not going to be interested in it, I'm not going to convert it to English to give to everyone else.
But I think this is where your Venn diagram that you mentioned earlier on about painter, historian, wargamer, I can't remember what the fourth dimension was, but
collector.
Anyway, collector. This is where you see where the emphasis lies, because many wargamers probably don't want that much history, they just want enough.
Yeah.
And so they're not prepared to, or don't have the time to put the hours in to find out something that in the end wouldn't be that important to them. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And therefore, if the material is quite hard to come by and then it's not in English, then, the reasons not to do it are mounting up all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody can come along and give them that, look here, read this, have a look at that, this is how you build your army, then they are more inclined to say, oh, okay, fair enough, I'll do it. Because everyone's kind of time short these days, and they just want everything sort of given to them. So what I've tried to do with my projects is to make available in a digestible form as much of that information as I can. I don't, as I said to you earlier on, I don't claim to be a historian, but what I tend to do is synthesize data as much as I can to make it accessible. So not have it in sort of convoluted, old-fashioned, stuffy forms, but uniforms are like that, flags look like that. This is how many men in the unit, they fought here, here, and here. Do you want to build that unit? Yeah, I do. Right, okay, there you go. Buy the figures there. That's because that's what people seem to want these days, and it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. easily digestible portions. So I think we've got an idea of where we are now in history, and we briefly covered it as well in your little introductory speech. But I think just for the people listening, so the Italian Wars, I always say it's from the twangy to the bangy, because we went from the crossbow to the arquebus and eventually to
Right.
the musket. So we've got the interesting thing about this period for me is it's another one of those crossover periods where we've got pike at the start and no pike at the end. So how does that make it difficult to game as an entire period, or what's the crossover like? Is it sudden or is it gradual?
No, crossover's gradual, probably like
Yeah.
most crossovers would be. It's like the same as, you see any 17th century figures got a soft floppy hat, and then
Mm.
anything after 1700's got a tricorn. I mean, that's just bloody ridiculous. I mean, there was a hard stop. Everybody handed in their hats and got a new hat. These were the periods when men had to wear the same socks for 3 years, so they're hardly going to sort of trade their hats in. So tricorns would have existed in the 1660s or 70s, but they
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have been called tricorns. I mean, they're only created by taking a small hat pin and pinning the side of your hat up. And if you pin the three sides up, you get a tricorn. Sometimes you pin
Yeah.
two sides up, sometimes the pin comes out, or it falls down, or you don't use any pins at all. They're all the same hats.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are the kind of things. It was a period of transition. Some units, the English hung on. The French and the English were quite conservative. They hung on to the pikes longer than others. The German states all sort of eschewed the pike and got rid of it before about 1685, 1686, which again is a very interesting thing because they were the ones that were largely fighting the Turks, mostly cavalry armies. Why did they
Yeah.
get rid of their pikes when they're fighting cavalry?
Yeah.
And the English retained pikes and they weren't fighting as much cavalry. So, I mean, these would all be for tactical and possibly economic reasons. The Swedes hung on to the pike till 1709, 1710. It was an active part of their strategy to use. It was a strategy, a tactical doctrine called go po, which in Swedish just means go on or charge basically. So go po, it's written as ga pa, but it's actually pronounced go po, which just means go for it. It just means go for it. That's really what it means.
Wasn't there a set of rules called that?
Yeah, I think P. Berry wrote them, another Yorkshireman.
Yeah.
Everything's about Yorkshire, isn't it? I think it's Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire. I mean, there isn't any other parts of England, is there? There's just those two. But seriously, that's why it's so fascinating. You've got the Swedes who are doing pretty much what your pointy stick brigade were doing during the Italian wars. Everyone else is changing over to muskets, but the Swedes still have 1/3 of the regiments, each regiment with pikes, and they don't fire before they charge. They fire immediately before contact, one volley, and then they ram in with the pike, and they scare everyone to death. And I mean, Sweden had a tiny population then, but it dominated Central and Eastern Europe for the thick part of 12 years, So, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, these things are absolutely amazing. And these days, I mean, the Swedish male population has failed to recover, even now, from the casualties sustained in the early 1700s. And the reason Sweden is so pacifist is because they couldn't afford that level of decimation within the population again. The Swedes are not pacifists. They're very warlike, but their common sense prevailed, and they said, right, we can't afford to do that again. I mean, 1 in 4 men were killed in Sweden, and they've never recovered from that.
Somebody like myself who's kind of got a passing knowledge of the period would probably classify battles as lines of infantry, cavalry on the flanks, and infantry using firepower or the pike to stop the cavalry. Is that a generalization, or is that pretty much close to what the fighting was like?
I'd say that's not really accurate.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the proportion of cavalry to infantry in this period and then compare it, say, to Napoleonic, And Napoleonic armies, typical Napoleonic armies, even the French or the Russians or Austrians, you might have maximum 20% of the army would be cavalry, but probably a little bit less. In this period that we're talking about in the 17th century, up to 1/3 of the army is cavalry. And in the Swedish army, more than half of the army is cavalry.
Yeah.
So these are not the staid lines of infantry shooting it out and pikes repelling cavalry. Cavalry were totally central to the tactical doctrine, and they were used en masse. So, for example, at Neerwinden, the French had nearly 22,000 cavalry. Now, that's much more than Napoleon had at Waterloo, significantly more. So that creates one of the problems with wargaming this period, and this is one of the sort of pointers I would always try and give people, is wargamers generally prefer to paint infantry rather than cavalry. So what they tend to do is they paint too much infantry and don't paint enough cavalry, and therefore the game will have a certain inevitability about it. It will be lines of infantry shooting at each other. Whereas if you were painting your army in the right proportions for this period, for every infantry unit you paint, you'd paint at least 1 or 2 cavalry squadrons. What you'll then get is the right proportions, and then the battle will feel completely fluid because most of your troops are mounted and mobile. So the infantry becomes an anchor in the centre, and the manoeuvre is done by the cavalry, which is the way that it was done. But wargamers sometimes, for some reason, I don't even know what that is, prefer to paint infantry.
Yeah.
So, and they paint too much, and they don't paint enough guys on the ponies, you know.
Yeah. I paint horses in the old school way with a base layer and then an oil wash and wipe over the top. And I do like 100, 130 horses at a time because it's just so straightforward, and then leave them. And this week I finished painting a unit of Gripping Beast, poor fellows, soldiers of Christ, the original Templars, that I painted the horses about 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And they've just been sat in a box because I do them all in a massive batch and then put them in boxes of units and then get around to painting them. I love doing horses. I think it looks amazing. But yeah, so that's kind of so where are artillery during this period? Are they integrated into the army? Have we got the Royal Artillery? How is artillery now part of the? Because in the Italian wars, it's all kind of a mercenary thing. It's hired. It's scientists and engineers who are doing the bangy and getting paid for it.
Well, in this period, it's a continuation of that, really. The Royal Artillery does exist, as it does in most armies, but it's a very small core of people, usually more educated guys from lower income families, so clever but poor, perhaps, or yeomanry stock. And they're not going to get an infantry colonelcy because they can't afford it, and they definitely can't afford to be the colonel of a cavalry regiment. But the guns are heavy, immovable, brought onto the battlefield and deposited by civilian crews who then leave. So the guns are pretty much fixed position for the whole battle. And there's not enough of them to create grand batteries, and there'll be of varying calibers as well. So basically what you've got are weapons of psychology rather than weapons of destruction. So they're not battle winners, but what they'll do is probably degrade the resilience of the people who are at the end of the charge. So when somebody's getting shot at, they're not going to like that. And it's quite unusual as well. So it's got a kind of scary effect on people, but it's not a battle winner. So artillery's in its infancy, and British sort of formal tactical batteries and things didn't really start coming into play until probably the War of the Austrian Succession, or round about then, much later, probably 30, 40 years later, something like that.
Do we have things, mobile artillery and things like horse artillery, is that outside of the period? Does that come later?
Galloper guns, maybe maybe a horse between two shafts of a light gun, pulling it to support an infantry battalion going forward. Yes, but these would be light pieces and not used en masse. So yeah, you've got some little bits of light support artillery, but artillery is not really a big thing in this period.
Excellent. Well, we've got a bit of a background now on the period, which is good because not everyone fights it, not everyone's familiar with it. So good to get an introduction for people. And I think we'll move on now to getting it on the table,
Yep.
if you like. And just as an introduction to that, and talking about the Beneath the Lily Banners rule set, how did your rule writing career start? How did you, were you a tinkerer with rules when you were younger? How did it begin?
Yeah, I think Tinkerer is a good way to describe it. And actually, the rule set that I used or was introduced to when I went to the guy's house in Accrington, that I mentioned, it was actually Burnley at the time. Sorry, Burnley. Was a version of a Wargames Holiday Centre double-sided.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
There was no rule set; it was just a play sheet, and I was quite happy to play with that. But the more I got into the period and the more I played it, the more I thought, yeah, I could probably expand on that, or that could be done a little bit differently. I'm not going to say better because that's incredibly arrogant, but
yeah,
differently. And basically, Lily Banners was it evolved from that experience. So I eventually then sat down and decided to start writing my own rule set based on that experience. And Lily Banners was a reasonably conventional rule set for the period until we got to the third edition, where Clarence Harrison, who's my co-pilot on a lot of
yeah,
these projects, suggested that we move to polyhedral dice, and because we already use those in Donnybrook. So basically that means we use a different die type for different quality troops. So
yeah,
raw troops would use a D6, drill troops would use a D8, veteran troops would use a D10, etc. And what we recognised that did by introducing those die types was eliminate huge QRS lists of factors, plus
yeah.
this, minus this, plus this. So the game changed, and it
Mm,
felt far more intuitive. So, and I've continued that use of polyhedral through all my rule sets now, and I've actually retrofitted it to some others. So, yeah, I think Lily Banner's changed. Interestingly, there's a group based somewhere, I think they're in Yorkshire actually, who still play very happily and frequently with the first edition of Lily Banners, and they're
oh well,
unashamed. We will not move from Lily Banner's first edition.
sounds
Um,
like Yorkshire.
yeah, but they have a great time, and
Great time.
they post
Yeah,
some great games up. And I see them. They're always at Partisan.
yeah.
So there's probably about half a dozen of them. But I moved on from that sort of rule construction in the first and second edition. That's when it changed. Third edition was when it changed, I feel.
There does seem to be a reluctance with some rule writers to move away from the D6, and I personally think that the different types of dices give you more flexible options. And was that your finding when you did that change at two
Yeah,
to three?
absolutely. I mean, I remember very clearly after we put a game on at Historicon for 3 days or 4 days about 6 or 7 years ago, and Clarence and I decided to stay because he's a US citizen, so he stays in Virginia. We decided to stay on at the hotel for a couple of days because we wanted to play test some new mechanisms. So we just sat in his hotel room, and we had a 2 foot square piece of teddy bear fur actually, and
Right.
we set units up, and I used a small notebook, and we literally rolled dice thousands of times over the course of 2
Yeah.
days, and then started to work out probabilities. I mean, it was an intensely boring thing to do, but we got a lot of breakthrough kind of moments in terms of how that would translate onto the
Mm,
tabletop finally. So we were really road testing it. And Clarence was into a lot of role play games, and he did a lot of kind of fantasy gaming. So I can't claim that the polyhedral idea was an original thought by me. It wasn't. It was his thought.
mm.
But translating it into the historical war games, let's say genre, if you like, was a breakthrough moment, and it gives Lily Banners a particular feel, which I think is quite innovative, actually.
Yeah, brilliant. And What sort of level of game is it, and how big are your infantry units? How big are your cavalry units? What size of game can it cope with?
Lily Banners can cope with as big a game as you want to have.
Yeah,
So it's a rule set that basically is scalable. I think is the word I'm
right.
looking
Yeah,
for. So
yeah.
if you wanted during lockdown, I came up with an idea, which was a joke initially. I was talking to Danny Falconbridge at Wargames Illustrated, and he said, "What
Mm,
daft things are you doing during lockdown?" It was when lockdown was a novelty.
yeah.
And we were coming up with all daft things that gamers were doing here and there. And he said, "Have you come up with anything?" And I said, "Well, you could probably do a tiny war game on a two by two table with 28mm figures." And we both had a laugh about it. And
Mm.
then afterwards, I thought, "Hang on a minute, you could probably do that." So what I wrote, I called it foreplay. So
Mm,
2 foot by 2 foot is four
yeah,
units aside is four, and four game turns. So it was
yeah.
foreplay. And for all you schoolboys who are giggling at the word foreplay, stop it now.
Stop it now.
Right, so that was the smallest iteration of Lily Banners, but we've refought Malplaquet with 200 battalions on a table 24 feet by 18 feet deep with all sorts of walk-in sections so that you can get the depth, and it works. It works. You just need somebody managing the time to make sure that the
Mm,
game turns are all done equally, because in a big game tables break down into sections, don't they?
yeah, yeah,
The slow guys, the medium guys, the fast guys, or
yeah.
whatever. So it's a scalable set of rules, but a normal game of Lily Banners you'd probably have maybe 12 to 16 units aside, and you could play a
Mm,
game in 2 hours on a 6x8.
yeah. How big would your infantry units be in terms of figures?
Infantry unit, a battalion of 18, three bases
Yeah,
of six.
yeah.
Cavalry unit, two bases of three, six. That acts as a squadron. It's actually representing two historical squadrons, but you call it a squadron in gaming terms. So you don't need massive amount of troops to have a game. And a battalion is a battalion. So the figure to man ratio, I was never precise about that because regimental and battalion sizes were variable. So I've
Mm,
said that for a typical game, one man or one figure represents between 30 and 35 men.
yeah.
So a
The old,
battalion's about 600 men.
yeah. The classic 1 to 33, the Bruce Quarry.
About there, yeah.
Yeah, that classic. I always got me that. Oh, it's so hard to work out. It's like, no, it's not. It's three is 100 minus one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's an engineer brain.
Yeah.
So, as we're on version 4 now, is that correct?
Yes, we're on version 4, and it's not fundamentally different from version 3. I made a
Yeah.
few tweaks,
Mm,
but, some people are saying, "Oh, how many versions are you going to do?" Blah, blah, blah. But what I'd always decided to do, Ken, since I've been a one-man band, and I am a one-man band, and all the books are all self-funded and self-published. So I do finite print runs of our books.
mm,
So when the book's sold out, it's sold out. I don't
yeah.
go for a reprint. Um, Basically because if you were going to do a second print run, you'd have to go through the whole cost thing again, and that's quite a risk. Because getting a book printed these days is not cheap. So when I bring out when it sells out, I immediately put the book to PDF. But if there's a demand for the book to be available in hardback again, I would not want to just put out the same stuff. So what I would do is do something new photographs, revise mechanisms where I've had feedback or whatever. Hence, you get the new edition. I would have probably called the book that came out probably a revised third edition,
Yeah.
but that's not as catchy as saying a fourth edition, if you like. But it is a revised third edition because there wasn't that much wrong with it, to be honest. And I mean, and if it's on a fourth edition, it's sold out every time before, so people are buying it and people are playing it, so
Yeah.
that's good. So,
Yeah.
and some people like rules and some people don't like rules, but that's what this hobby's all about. We're not all doing the same thing and playing with the same stuff. It makes it interesting. If people like my rules, that's great. If they don't, then that's fine. I don't mind.
not trying to get exact figures or anything from you, but I'm interested to know um, how people still buying the printed book, or are more people moving to the PDF? Um,
No, it's a good point. I haven't released the new book on PDF yet,
mm,
but the latest edition of Lily Banners is the fastest selling rule set that
mm,
I've brought out in 20 years.
yeah,
So it's continued to sell. The initial sales were way above whatever level we had before. And I actually got a bigger print run done this time in anticipation, but I think I undershot the runway a bit with that, to be
yeah.
honest.
Wow.
Because so I mean, this is a small period, really, when you think about
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's not Napoleonic, it's not American Civil War, and I'm not pretending that it is, but Lily Banners over the years, it's probably sold, I don't know, 7 or 8 thousand copies or something like that.
Wow.
So,
Good.
so, so that's not bad.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
It's
that's not
absolutely
bad.
fantastic.
Um,
I find, and I think it might be a generational thing, because I've spoke to others the same way, is I struggle to get information in reading from a PDF, whereas if I read from a book, it's a lot better. And there are times in the past where I've bought a PDF of a set of rules just because it's cheaper, um, and read through it and got the gist of it and thought I really like this, and bought the print copy to actually learn them.
I would like to go to print with everything that I've brought out, but it's
Mm.
just not viable to do
Yeah,
that because some things are so esoteric, or and they're so niche that people, a print run would not work. But I like my wargaming to be. I make the books actually for me,
mm.
so I make things that I would want to buy,
Yeah,
and then if other people buy them, that's a bonus.
yeah,
So basically, I like books as well. I would prefer a book to a PDF. But these days, of course, what's really killing us is postal costs. So even if your book's reasonably priced, my books they're not cheap, but they're
mm.
not any more expensive than something you'd buy from Warlord or anybody else.
Yeah,
And the quality is as good, in my opinion, humble opinion.
mm.
However, if you're sending it to France or Spain or Thailand or somewhere, the postal cost of getting a 1 kilo book these days is
Mm.
it's absolutely off the chart. And then of course you got all this hassle about import taxes and all the nonsense that's going on, and then we had the tariff issue in the US.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I know governments are not conspiring to do the small business down or
Yeah,
anything, but we're collateral damage in a bigger game.
sounds like it. Certainly sounds like it. As the sets developed, you mentioned this big change at version 2. How have you tried to it's always difficult to explain this, but a period flavour, how to get it to recreate the warfare of that time rather than before or after?
Well, what I've tried to do is make sure that units don't do things that they wouldn't have done
Hmm.
then.
Yeah,
So, and a lot of the feedback you get that asks for rule changes or mechanism changes or why did you do this is
stay lost.
because they lost, or because the unit couldn't do what they wanted it to do
Yeah,
on the tabletop. So why can't units move sideways? Well, because they didn't move sideways. Why can't units just walk backwards? Because they didn't walk backwards. They would turn round, walk backwards, and then turn back round again. I mean, there was no cadence marching then, so they didn't march to the beat of the drum or anything. March rates were very slow. One of the sort of common issues. I mean, I think it's a daft comment. I mean, I really have to say this is a daft comment. Movement rates are too slow in Lily Banners. Well,
Hmm.
put your figures closer together,
Yeah.
mate. Jesus Christ. I mean, that's just bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And sometimes people want to say something just for the sake of saying something. So say something sensible. That's daft.
Yeah.
So this is a period when there was no formal drill, there was no cadenced marching. the colonels paid for the uniforms, the weapons, and basically the regiment was their private fiefdom. These were not Napoleon's legions. You know, they weren't Victorian parade ground drilled units. They were just bunches of guys in coloured coats, you know, told to turn up or they'd be shot probably. Yeah, that's. I try and make it feel as clumsy as it must have been, if that makes sense. I do my best to do that, and you know, and some people won't like that because what they want are clean cut, decisive outcomes. But life's not like that, is it?
I mean, it sounds. You know, I'm totally on your side with this. It sounds a little bit of a frustration, and I get this. I'm doing this World Cup of historical war games rules at the moment, and some of the questions that I've got, and it got to the point where I was literally going, "You're fucking stupid. You really are just fucking stupid." What I did was it got so big that I had to split the rules into A to K and J to Z.
Right.
And people were nominating rules, but they didn't. They nominated sharp practice in A to J, and it's like,
right,
you don't even get the alphabet, son. We're struggling here, aren't we?
Right.
But is the, you know, if I'm pretty sure if we sat over a table and had a game together, we wouldn't need a lot of explanation of the minutiae of some of the rules, whereas some people who may be new to the period or new to the hobby need more. So how difficult is it to write a set of rules that's universal for people, regardless of their experience in the hobby?
Well, I try and make the explanations as clear as possible, but you've got to strike a balance between clarity and over-egging the pudding or even tedium. Because bearing in mind the comments I made about Republic to Empire earlier on, trying to cut out the little rat runs for the cheats, you've got to make it clear but not overly detailed. And, you know, ultimately, situations that are unclear for people could be decided by a dice roll or a gentleman's agreement. I mean, let's face it, it's a game we're playing here. They're toy soldiers. I think we need to, sometimes we lose perspective on that. And it's very easy to lose perspective on it for anyone, gamer or writer. So, I mean, I don't really take myself too seriously, Ken. I hope that comes across quite strongly. And I'm not setting myself up as some kind of guru, not at all. I'm a person who is passionate about the hobby and passionate about a period that I'm really interested in. And I like an argument or a discussion. I don't mean an aggressive argument, but I like a discussion, and I like the challenge of trying to change somebody's mind if it's open enough to be changed. And equally, I'd like to think my mind could be changed if somebody put forward an argument. But what I've seen, particularly in relation to this period, is that it's a lot less niche now than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I consider that a job done. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to big myself up there, but you know, I've stuck at it. And I've answered the questions, and I've tried to be as supportive and sharing as I can with data and things. And that's been rewarded because there's a lot of people like Lily Banners. I mean, I remember when it came out at first, and it must have been on TMP or something, and it was getting pilloried by people who'd never read it and were never going to buy it. And then I'm thinking, well, so what would you do about that? Now, it's definitely, let's say, held in a lot of kind of fondness by people that play it. And so that's fine. Good. And if you don't like it, then that's fine too.
And you know, and that was reflected in this World Cup of Wargames rules that I've just done, because the Lily Banners finished in the top 16,
right?
And from a Scottish World Cup point of view, that's really good.
I'm beating the odds there, eh?
But that and then when you say that was out of 203 sets of rules,
right? Really? Right? Okay.
That is really. Really good.
I didn't know that. I wasn't actually aware of the World Cup that you were running. No disrespect, but I'm a bit time.
No, it's fine.
Time pressured, so I just wasn't aware of it until Actually, somebody sent me an email. It was only a couple of days ago, and said that Ken was running this World Cup thing, and I said, "Well, what is that then?" And then they tried to explain it to me, but I decided not to look at it deliberately, because I thought, no, I'll probably read something that annoys me, so I'll stay away from it.
No, well, it's done remarkably well. I unfortunately got knocked out in the first round of the knockouts
Right.
by. So I'll just edit this out to make it look like I know what I'm doing, which is difficult. I know. I'll come to it in a minute. Oh, here we go. By Saga,
Right.
and it was a really there was only 30 votes in it out of 500.
All right. Okay.
So not bad at all. Not bad at all,
Good.
mate. Really, and a lot of positive comments about the rule set. So, but I think, and it's come across really well in this interview, is it's your passion for that period, and that's what I'm like with the Italian wars. I'm literally ramming my pike block in people's faces and going, "Look how good this looks," and I think that's what can bring a period on, is to have somebody literally waving the flag for it. So all kudos for that as well, mate. So I've got version 3 of Lily Banners, and I haven't played it yet because I haven't finished my armies.
Right. Okay.
And then bloody version 4's come out, but don't worry. We'll get that eventually. I'm sure you're the same. I have projects that go on for like 4 or 5 years before they get on the table.
I just painted a figure that's been sitting on. I've just finished painting a figure that's been sitting half finished on my table for 10 years. I did it this week. 10 years.
There you go. Yeah. I think we're all the same. So not only have you done the rules, you've got some figures as well, haven't you?
Yep.
So was that a frustration from what was available, or how did the figure range come about?
Complete accident. A total accident. It was not my figure range at the beginning. It was started by a guy who's now passed on, a guy called Spencer Warner, who was a London lad who lived in Glasgow and ran a games store in Glasgow. And he was looking for a gap in the market, and he saw that League of Augsberg period was a gap. And so he asked for my advice on codes, and what would we need, what should I get designed. He didn't really know anything about the period. He was looking for an opportunity, and so I gave him some advice and some direction, and then that went on and on and on for a few months, and he was getting figures sculpted, and he was showing me them, and we were getting them modified and all that kind of stuff. And then unfortunately Spencer became ill, and unfortunately he was never going to recover from what happened to him, and he asked if I would buy the figure range off him, obviously to help him through his illness, and I really couldn't refuse that. So I reluctantly agreed to take it, and I thought, I better do something with this now. So that was how Warfare Managers. I didn't even think the name up. Warfare Managers was not my name. So I bought it in its infancy before it had really been released. So it had been created. A few codes had been created. I took it on, and then I thought, I better put a bit of heat under this. But at that time, and for the first probably 12 years of Warfare, I was also running a company. I mean, I was the managing director of an international company, and so I had to do that on the side, Warfare. So I only since I stopped working did it sort of, well, actually it's run now by my children. My children run it, and my wife. So I just concentrate now. I don't work now, and I just do my writing. I mean, I help with the research, and I help with the kind of background stuff, and the socials and all that kind of stuff. But the nitty gritty of it is done by the family. And that's good, and of course we've kept the same designer since the start, who's now doing all his work digitally, and he's a real enthusiast for the period as well. He's based in Ireland, and so it's a nice creative partnership. So yeah, having young people involved is also quite good because you know what it's like. You know what it's like, Ken. I mean, your energy levels go down as well, and I wasn't well enough for a while to be able to participate in it. And when I got a bit better, I just left it with the people that were in it. So I've got it's in the family, but
sounds fantastic. And how big is the range? And how long? You said 12 years there. It sounds like it's been going on for quite a while.
It's been going for 15 years now.
Wow.
And with the number of codes is incredible. I mean, I've lost count. We've literally got hundreds of codes. And now since the beginning of this year, we've started using digital design. And now, I mean, because you know, maybe a fact that would be good to get out there. I don't know if anybody cares about this. People, Wargamers might care. They might say. They might say, I don't care. But anyway, here's an interesting fact. Wargames figures are generally manufactured from a tin lead alloy called MMX42 or something like that. And about 3 years ago, a kilo of this metal was about £12. Now it's £26.33 per kilo. Wow. And that is to do with demand from China, but it's also to do with the international situation. We don't want to go into the politics of that. But producing things in metal is it's extremely expensive. And manufacturers are being squeezed because they can't. I mean, nobody's doubled their figure prices in the last 2 years.
No.
But raw material prices have doubled. So people can work that out for themselves. And a lot of the time, you know, people do complain about prices of stuff because everything's going up. But there'll come a point where if companies aren't realistic about pricing the intellectual effort that's gone into producing stuff, because, you know, whatever a figure costs, there's been thousands of pounds worth of research and development going in before that. Yeah. And, you know, you'll just end up with a market that's got a couple of big players like Warlord who've hoovered up every other little brand that's going, and there'll be nothing else. And so people will just have to buy through the one place. That's the way it'll go. So we've recently started 3D printing our designs and trying to find a material that's robust enough to compete with plastics and metal. But, you know, you're the same vintage probably as me, Ken, and there's a residual comfort factor around metal. But
I like a bit of metal.
But I think
both musically and figures.
Yeah, but I think metal will gradually become a thing of the past for this hobby because the international markets are going to price metal figure production out. It's just becoming too expensive. If raw materials have gone up more than 100% in 2 years, which they have, then, you know, where's that going to end? Where's that curve going to end?
Yeah, I think I've seen that grow quite a lot over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. With the increase in plastic figures, there's a lot of people go, oh, I want to do this. What plastics can I use? Well, you can actually buy them in metal from these 12 companies. Oh, no, I want them in plastic. Well, you can't get them in plastic because nobody does them. Well, how do I convert plastics? So there is a drive from the younger generation below us to go plastic.
Well, the other thing, of course, is, I mean, that whole area is fraught with opportunity and risk because one of the big problems up to this point has been that most commercially available 3D printed stuff has been quite brittle. So resin but now a lot of the resins that are being produced are as good as, if not superior to, plastics. So it's robust enough to stand. It can be dropped and it can be bent and it won't break, which is good. Yeah. And of course, the other dimension to that is a lot of people will design figures and sell the STLs, which are the files to print at home. But of course, that's the road to oblivion, because if you spend £1,000 getting a figure developed and then start selling an STL, now for every 10 customers that buy it legitimately, how many of them are going to be passing it on to their mates and saying, you want to print that? I'll give you the file. I'll send you the file. You've got no control over that.
Yeah.
So I don't. We will never. Our warfare managers will never sell STLs. Absolutely not.
Have you done a bit of experimentation with the resin, and have you come to a
Yes,
product that you're happy with now?
it's coming back to Yorkshire again, Ken. I've got to say, I mean, it's almost like Yorkshire's the Death Star, isn't it? It's pulling everything and it's tracking people. We've got a manufacturing partner in Yorkshire now, a resin manufacturing partner, and they are super professional, young company, not got any sort of the guy and his team are just on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've spent my life in business, and when you're dealing with people that are professional, and this guy's a professional, so I'm very pleased with the way that's going. Which means that we've got a lot of Warfare's got a lot of new stuff being designed by Clibinarium, who's our designer, and we will probably cover all of the War of the Spanish Succession for about 6 different countries this year.
Oh wow!
Full armies, everything. Foot, horse, guns, dragoons, personalities will all be coming out this year at reasonable prices as well.
Is there significant differences between the countries at this point? Because I've seen a lot of manufacturers just do generic WSS figures. Is there enough difference between the nationalities to warrant different ranges? There is.
Short answer is yes. And let me just give you a couple of quick examples to not bore people to death. French uniforms would have a different cut from the English. Pocket shapes are different. What they wore on their lower bodies would be different. Position of their cartridge pouches, etc., would be different. Danes would wear double-breasted coats when nobody else did, so that looks different. The Dutch would have different equipment from the English. So yes, there are enough differences. Of course, there are generic figures out there, and if we go back 25, 30 years to when the Perrys were designing figures for Foundry, they were producing generic figure types and people were just painting them differently.
Yes,
and I did that as well. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with those figures because I've got hundreds of them anyway, and I still have them in my collection. But what we've done is we've taken the research that's available now, and we have customized to produce very accurate figures for the French, for the English, for the Dutch, for the Imperialists, for the Danes. They're all different.
Well, that's good to hear because I have had a sneaking suspicion for many years that people are just being lazy with it. Now you've confirmed that.
Well, but there's no reflection on customers because customers will only buy what's available.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, if you're designing something and getting it produced commercially, even if you're a small company, to go for tooling on a plastic set of figures, for example, I mean, you could be talking the thick end of. For one set of figures, you could be talking the thick end of 15 grand. For the tools, that's before the figures are designed.
Wow.
Now, that's a lot of money.
Well, that is a lot of money.
Because these are dies that have been produced and, they're CNC milled. You're an engineer. They're CNC milled dies. I mean, they're done, that's precision engineering. I'm an engineer myself, metallurgist, that's my profession. That's a big investment, which is another reason why smaller companies like Warfare, like ours, can't automatically go to plastic. Because if we've got 50 codes, just do the maths here. If we've got 50 codes at 15 grand a set of tools, it's £1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to get the tooling done. I mean, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford that. So, you've got to look for ways to get your products to market. And wargaming is you'll know yourself if you know railway modelers and stuff or fantasy modelers. They're the bigger bulk of the model hobby. We're a tiny little segment of the chocolate orange, And we're in the minority, and probably an aging minority. We definitely need new blood in the hobby.
Yeah. So these lads down near us, are they doing the production for you?
They're doing not the design. They're doing the printing.
The production.
So what we do is our guys will do the mastering. So we'll design and master the figures to make sure they look good. Yeah. But then to get print volumes. Then you need somebody with what's called a print farm. So somebody that's got 10 machines, 12 machines, 20 machines, so they'll have them running all the time, so they can print volume, whereas somebody doing it at home is just printing for themselves.
Yeah.
You could go to a commercial print farm, but better to go to a wargame manufacturing print farm because they love the hobby and they'll get it right.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done. So yeah, a lot of our design capabilities come from Yorkshire. Production capability come from Yorkshire. In fact, Yorkshire is the sort of it's like Warfare should have like a stock of rock Yorkshire written through it because
maybe you can get little made in Yorkshire stickers to put on your figures.
Yeah, we could do that.
On your bag,
we could do that. Yeah. I won't try and do the accent, Ken.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. But are the figures available? Is it like individual or in packs or as units?
No, I don't do individual, or Warfare doesn't do. The kids manage that now, but I don't do individual stuff because that's the road to oblivion again.
Madness.
Because you'll say we've got a set here of 20, and then somebody will say, "Will you split a pack? Because I only want 2 figures."
Yeah.
I once saw somebody at a Wargames show who asked Dave Thomas for a pack of spears, which was about £5, and it had about 50 spears in it. And the guy said, "Could you split the pack? I only want 4." I mean, you can't do that. So.
No.
Sets of 5, or now with the resin stuff, it's going to be in battalions of 18 or squadrons of 6.
Right.
So
no, it's fine. Fits in with the rules. Fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
So we're just coming towards the end of the show now, and it just really leaves me to ask you, what is the future for Lily Banners, for the figures, for the ships? What's Barry Hilton cooking up in his wargaming pot as we speak?
Well, I have handed the reins, if you like, over to the youngsters, but I've still got some kind of intellectual input into it, and obviously I'm the one that knows about the period, really. So we will continue to bring out ships in 2400 scale for the Anglo-Dutch Wars, but also in 1200 scale, because we've got that resin process now that we can have pre-rigged ships printed in 1200. Those are beautiful. We've got lots of 28mm stuff coming out and for figures for the War of the Spanish Succession and the War of the League of Augsberg, which is the previous war. The 14800 ships and metal will continue. We've got the full Royal Navy out for the First World War and the Second World War, and the Kriegsmarine for the Second World War, and the Hochseeflotte, Kaiserliche Marine, if you like, for the First World War. The American US Navy for the Second World War is designed, and that will be out this year sometime, as will the Imperial Japanese Navy. So, yeah, we'll keep firing on all cylinders. Loads of stuff coming out. I've got rules. We're going to be reissuing Donnybrook.
Oh, yes, we didn't mention Donnybrook on the way through, but yeah.
Donnybrook will be reissued, hopefully, as Donnybrook Dark, which will be a sort of fantasy sort of version of Donnybrook, which we're hoping to do. And I may well be getting involved in a Kickstarter, or Warfare maybe getting involved in a Kickstarter over the next few months. We'll see what develops there, but that might happen. So there's quite a lot of stuff, and of course the Dreadnought rules will be coming out in hardback at some point this year.
Excellent. Lots and lots of stuff to look forward to. Thanks very much for your time today, mate. It's been informative, enjoyable. I've really enjoyed our chat. Just leaves me at the end of the show. I've been battering you for nearly 3 hours. Have you got a question for me? You can say
yes,
no.
I do have a question.
Go on.
What do you enjoy about podcasting?
Honestly, if I enjoy meeting people in the hobby, and meeting people through doing this, I have met like Henry Hyde, who I would now consider Henry a friend, who I speak to outside of wargaming, and I've got to speak to people like George Nafziger, the American writer, Nick Jellicoe, the grandson of Admiral Jellicoe from Jutland. I just love, and I've always loved talking to people, um, and having a chat and having a conversation. And us wargamers are quite widely spread, and I just find it fascinating talking about the hobby with people. So it's I've got to be honest and say it's mostly for me.
That's good. That's good enough. That's a good answer.
if I didn't, if I didn't put these out, well, I mean, then nobody'd come on the show. But you know, I've got a load of enjoyment out of it. I've got loads of people who've written to me and emailed me. They've called me a twat and all sorts of stuff. But apart from them, there's been others who've emailed me and said, "Look, Ken, my wife passed away or something along those lines, and I'm on my own. I'm in the house, and I really enjoy it when you have one of your podcasts on because I always make sure that we cover what you do and and your business and your rules and your stuff. But this isn't a selling podcast. I'm not saying you're not coming to me and go, I've got this really ace new set of rules and I want to promote them. I'm just going to go, no, fuck off and do it on somewhere else. I want to talk to people about them and the hobby and what they do as well. So, and people have said I really enjoy that format, and it really, gets me through a painting session or going to work or whatever. So, I do it mostly for myself, but I do it because people enjoy it.
Good. That's good. I'm glad you do enjoy it. I've enjoyed it as well. It's been a good opportunity just to chat and sort of even think about some of the questions you've asked, which I think have been great questions for me to reflect on why I've made certain decisions or do certain things.
Yeah.
And when will this go out, Ken?
Hopefully, I'm trying to plan it so it comes out either Friday evening or Saturday morning. So I'll probably do it Saturday morning. If you can bang those photographs to me as soon as,
I'll do that today.
And then job's a good one. Well, it just means we've got time to say good night to the audience. So good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Barry Hilton. I certainly did. Loads of interesting information in there about the stuff that he games, and I don't know hardly anything about the Anglo-Dutch naval world, so that was a bit of a lesson for me. Really, really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. Keep involved with the World Cup of Historical War Games rules and join in if you're not already involved. I'm not going to announce a next podcast at this stage. As many of you know, I've been quite sporadic this year with the shows, and I've not quite planned out where and what I'm going to do next with it. But there will be another show. I just don't know what it will be and when it will occur. So until next time, see you.